So what is MS? Well, MS stands for multiple sclerosis. Multiple sclerosis is an unpredictable disease that takes place in the central nervous system. It disrupts the flow of information in the brain and between the brain and the body. The exact cause of MS is unknown. What we do know is that something triggers the immune system to attack the brain and spinal cord. All we know is that there is no cure for it. There are 4 types of MS. There's clinically isolated syndrome, relapsing remitting, primary progressive, and secondary progressive. CIS refers to the first episode of neurological symptoms that lasts at least 24 hours and is caused by inflammation and demyelination in the central nervous system. It can be either monofocal or multifocal. Monofocal episode refers to a person experiencing a single neurological sign or symptom, while multifocal episode means a person has experienced more than one symptom. Now, experiencing CIS does not mean a person will develop MS, but people can be in CIS their entire life if nothing else happens. Relapsing remitting is the most common disease course. It is characterized by clearly defined attacks of new and increasing neurological symptoms. These attacks are referred to as relapses or excursions. Some people call them flares or flare-ups. They are followed by periods of partial or complete recovery called remissions. During remissions, all symptoms may disappear, some may stay. There seems to be no progression of the disease during the remission period. Basically, you have an attack and then a period where you recover. Then you have another attack and the cycle continues. But the symptoms of these attacks don't always go away. SPMS follows an initial relapsing remitting course. Some people may start out with RMS and transition to SPMS. In this course, there is a progression of worsening neurological function over time. It is characterized as active or not active, with progression or without progression. Active means there is a relapse or evidence of new MRI activity during a certain time period. Progression is when there is an evidence of disability increase over time or with or without relapses of new MRI activity. Finally, the 4th type of MS is primary progressive. PPMS is characterized by worsening neurological function and disability from an onset of symptoms. This happens without early relapses or remissions. In this course, MS attacks the body in a more shortened amount in time than the others. It is mostly a straight line of worsening function in the mind and body. Now that we know what MS is and the different types, it's time that we hear how it affects people's lives and what it has taken away from them. All the guys in this video are from a Facebook group called Men with MS. We were also able to interview some of their family members. Now, not everyone was asked the same questions, and sadly we had to cut some answers out because of video time restraints. But before we start, I would just like to give a big thank you to everyone that volunteered their time to speak to me and allowed me to share their stories with you. Hold on, let's just pause the video there for a second. While editing, I noticed some things I would like to note before we can actually begin. People with MS can experience trouble with memory recall. Some refer to this as cog fog. Knowing this was an issue, all the guys in this video were given their questions beforehand, so you may notice some appear to be reading their answers or looking for others for assistance, along with long pauses in the middle of talking. They also lose eye contact and seem to stare off into space. Now I'm actively choosing to leave these instances in the video so you guys can visually see for yourself the tip of the multiple sclerosis iceberg. Now, back to the video. Let's get started. So we're going to start by having you state your name, when you were diagnosed, and with what type of MS. As for the family members, we're going to have you state your name in your relation to the person with MS.
Hello, my name is Matthew, and I was clinically diagnosed in November 2004, and at that time I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting.
My name is Edward Snyder. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in July of 2010, and I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis, RRMS.
My name is Catherine Snyder, and I'm the wife of Edward Snyder. We have been married for 25 years.
My name is Jim Matura. I was diagnosed in 2005. I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS.
My name is Daniel Hernandez. I was diagnosed in 2012 with RRMS, relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis.
Hello, my name is Russell Turk. I was diagnosed pretty recently in November 9th of 2021. And the official diagnosis is the one that now is called relapsing, which I think used to be called relapsing remitting MS.
My name is Kent Jones, and I was diagnosed with MS in 2004 with the relapsing remitting MS.
I'm Michelle Jones.
Hi, I'm Paul Martell, and I'm in Wisconsin. And I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS in the spring of 2015 at the age of 54. And at the present time, I'm approaching 62.
I'm Mike Szymanski. I'm in Hollywood, California. I was diagnosed in 2000, the year 2000, around my birthday. And I have now progressive MS. I was originally diagnosed with relapsing remitting, and now it's progressive.
My name is Randy Hewling. I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS in 2016, September 1st.
I'm Anthony McGinty. I was diagnosed in January of 2018. I have relapsing remitting MS, and I'm 36 years old.
My name is Caleb Boland. I was diagnosed with relapsing remitting MS in February of 2008.
My name is Kimberly Kopp. I'm Caleb's girlfriend. I've known him since the end of 2008, and we've been together since 2009.
I'm Jeffrey Andrew Wittick. I was diagnosed in July. I was diagnosed on July 22nd, 2021, and I have relapsing remitting MS.
My name is Wendy Benson, and I am married to Eric Benson.
My name is Eric Benson. I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1984, 85-ish. I'm not really sure. It's been a minute. 36 years, I guess. And I'm what MS do I have?
It was primary progressive, but now it's relapsing remitting.
It's relapsing remitting MS.
So I was diagnosed, so my name is Michael Valines, and I was diagnosed in May 2018, and the doctor just prescribed me as MS. He didn't give me the post-secondary remitting, because when the story on how I ended up getting my CS fluid with the lumbar puncture done is kind of crazy. I ended up getting stuck about 4 or 6 different times. I forget the number. And because I ended up getting stuck so many times to draw the fluid, there was some blood in the fluid. So the guy who drew the fluid, he was like, there's some blood in the fluid. They're going to have to figure out what happened with that and what's up with that. So my neurologist said, hey, I read the report, and I think because there's so much trauma in the area that's because there's blood in your fluid, and I'm just going to call it MS. So I went, I'm good with that. He was like, I don't think we need to do another lumbar puncture. So I was like, I'm good with that. So that's how I got diagnosed with MS.
When did you first notice you had MS?
When I was 14, when my mom first got diagnosed, I did a lot of research, like most people do when their parents get diagnosed with MS. And I just started to notice some similarities to a spastic issue in my back that no one could ever find an issue with. And I had a lot of mental health that was very hard, especially because of personality issues, which aren't normally big in adolescence, normally that are definitive. So I kept having a lot of problems growing up.
When I first knew I had MS, well, I didn't know it at the time, but I want to say it was like 2000, 2001. that I noticed that I had a tingling sensation in my right hand, on my left hand. I'm sorry, my left hand, and that has been there for the past 22 years.
Having visions with problem with my eyes.
At first was symptomatic, I guess, late in my junior year of high school, 1984. I noticed I had some numbness as I was going to work, and went from there.
I was walking my dogs on a hike, and I tripped and kind of hurt my foot. And I was walking around, it was started swelling up. And about 3 days later, I went to the emergency room, and they said, "You broke your ankle in 3 places. You should not have been able to walk. This is really painful. And so we're going to send you to a neurologist." And I didn't think anything of it. And they came back, the neurologist was testing me for all kinds of things, carpal tunnel syndrome and all this other stuff. And it took me about a year to finally get diagnosed as having MS.
The signs that I was experiencing, I didn't know it was MS. This is almost 17 years ago. So at the time I was just feeling, some tingling in my legs and in my feet. It really didn't give too much thought about it. And, it was interesting because I would put my arm on the desk at my work, and it felt like I was putting my arm on a block of ice. And really, I just kind of blew it off for a while. And then there was a particular situation that took place, and I was outside. There was a lot of stress going on with my work. We had a few hurricanes that went through where we lived, and just a phenomenal amount of stress. And I was actually at a house helping repair their house and in their land and everything like that. And I literally could not move. I ended up basically sitting on the side of the road, called my wife, and I said, "Something's not right."
I probably, now I can look back, I can probably notice that something was wrong, maybe as far back as 2015 or 2016. But I think it's human nature to sort of ignore little hints that your body is not acting as it should. Or in my age group, when I was in my 50s, I started to just excuse everything to age and say, well, that's just body getting older. Unfortunately, I was misdiagnosed in 2016 with something else. Yeah, I think so. 2016 was when officially something was, there was recognition that something wasn't right, even though it was a misdiagnosis. So I'd say upwards to 6 or 7 years.
I first noticed the signs. I noticed things started acting different in 2015, I believe it is. And then just gradually, slowly over time, things got worse and worse. And then about the time when I was diagnosed, I ended up, I'd walk in onto a job site. I was a helper at the time in industrial construction. And I'd walk in fine. And then by the end of the day, it looked like I was limping out of the gate. And I really wasn't limping. It just, my legs just didn't want to work like they should. So eventually all the guys on the job site, my foreman called me Mikey and a bunch of other people. And they were all like, "Mikey, you should go get checked out." And in college, I was making a run for a national championship in judo. That's when I noticed like my joints and stuff were just popping more than they should, whether that was because of all the lifting I was doing or because of the MS. And so I was like, no, I'm good. I'll just keep on stretching it out. And I thought that because everything had shrunk, that the muscles and stuff that were there that really helped me out, they weren't there anymore. And then eventually I was like, I need to go get this checked out.
Some of it was in hindsight. When I went in for diagnosis, it wasn't. I didn't expect to have an MS diagnosis be the result. I went in just for a routine physical and happened to mention to the doctor, on my way out. He goes, "Oh, you have any other questions?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I got this little weird rash." And he looked at it and goes, "That's nothing." And I said, "The weird thing is it feels cold." He goes, "What do you mean cold?" I said, "Well, like somebody's holding a piece of ice on it or something." And he said, "Well, that's not right." So that was the original symptom that I had in 2004, and 6 or so months after that, I was diagnosed with MS after going through a bunch of other tests. But after that, you start looking back and you're like, okay, like in years prior, I would go to the gym and work out, and my teeth would get all numb, and I'd think, oh man, that's endorphin rush, and that's all good. What wasn't endorphins? It was just an MS symptom that was undiagnosed at that point, and so it probably would have gone back to about 2001 of having those kind of symptoms.
So I was on a work trip, actually heading to Mississippi, and I do a lot of PowerPoint presentations. I'm a trainer. So I was up in front of a classroom giving a PowerPoint presentation, and I noticed my eyes were like really blurred out, starting to get some double vision. And I was supposed to be down there for a couple days, and I was having a really hard time seeing. So I ended up saying, you know what, I better go back to New York. I left the next day. My eyes were still pretty blurry, kind of like double vision. That morning when I got back, I went to like an urgent care trying to see, what it could be. And, I thought maybe I had like an ear infection, something like that. And he said, no, you should go to an eye doctor. So I went to ophthalmologist, and the guy said I had 6-nerve palsy, which I've never heard of, but I guess it means that one of the eyes moves slower than the other eye. So it's causing like a double vision effect. And then he said I should go to a neurologist from there because you got to figure out why you have 6-nerve palsy. So I went to a neurologist, got an MRI. They told me, oh, we'll contact you on Monday. It's not a big deal. Don't worry about it. And then they called me basically 2 hours later after my MRI came in, told me to go to the hospital because I had MS.
I first noticed I had MS it was right before my diagnosis, really. I was used to work for DirecTV, and I was on my way to work, driving my van, and I realized that I couldn't feel my left hand gripping the steering wheel. And after I noticed that, I realized that my whole left side was just numb, like Novocaine numb, and I thought I was having a stroke, really. And it wasn't until I went to the emergency room and went through, all the protocols there. Found out I was limping, which I didn't really realize I was limping that much. And I had like no motor control over my left hand. And had an MRI the next day, and then I was diagnosed with MS, that next day. So it was pretty quick. And then, but looking back, there was probably a few instances before that big episode, which could have been leading up to the major episode. So but the first time I noticed the MS was the major episode, though.
Probably in 2004. I first started, I was noticing that my left foot wouldn't, I was having trouble with curbs and those cement things in parking lots, those cement things that stop the cars. Mm-hmm. I wasn't able to, my foot wasn't lifting up properly. And I was stumbling a lot. I didn't know what it was. I was getting ready to, or had just turned 40. So it was kind of one of those things that, is this age? What is this? So I didn't know what was going on. There was nothing physically wrong with me, other than this. I wasn't coughing. There was no reason for me to go to a doctor other than this foot problem. So I didn't know what it was. So I was going to my general practitioner and saying, doctor, I can't do this anymore. And he was saying, well, don't do that anymore. So it was, kind of one of those things where I didn't know what was going on.
It's an interesting story on how this all kind of came about to get my diagnosis. I was going to school on a Wednesday morning, carrying all my work and whatnot. As I went to the building, I thought I slipped on some ice and fell, and my stuff scattered all over the place. I picked it up, went and taught all day at school. We had parent-teachers conference that night, and during parent-teachers conference, I was kind of getting confused and not being able to focus, but I thought, well, maybe I hit my head when I fell or whatnot. Well, I had a convention that weekend, so I went up to the Wisconsin Dells to meet up with my colleagues in the tech ed field. And Thursday night we had a banquet, and I met up with some of my college cohorts and whatnot afterwards, and we were talking. And all of a sudden I just said to one, am I making any sense? And he says, well, what do you mean? And I said, I'm just confused. And then he laughed and he said, well, about as much sense as you usually make. So then we just laughed it off. And then I said, maybe it's a long day, I got to go to bed. So I went to bed, and I was wondering what the heck was going on. Did I have a stroke, or what the hell's going on? And then the next day I went to a couple of the conference sessions. And in the second session, I was sitting listening to the presenter, and all of a sudden it was like, something's really wrong. I lost vision in my right eye completely. And I couldn't stay focused and grasp what he was talking. Well, just 2 months earlier, I had lost a colleague who had passed away, and he kind of tapped me on the shoulder and says, hey, you got to get out of here and get this thing checked out. Something ain't right. So I headed home, and I went right to the urgent care to get it started looked at. They did CAT scans and all kinds of things. But then my primary physician kind of took over and really got the ball rolling. Looking back at it after I was diagnosed, there were symptoms that were overlooked for 40 years. Back when I was in college, my mom took me for a physical. The next morning I called her and said, Mom, you got to come get me. And what's wrong? I said, I can't get out of bed. And she says, so help me, if I come home and there ain't nothing wrong. I said, Mom, I didn't even go out with the boys last night, but I couldn't move my legs. I couldn't get out of bed. I went back this spring for college, and I was playing softball. And if I looked up and lost the horizon, my body would just wither and I'd fall like a rag doll. I just lost total control of everything. And when I was walking to classes, if people walked past me and their shadow crossed my path, my body would shut down and I'd fall. Well, I don't know, male pride, just, brush yourself off and keep going, and didn't say much about it. Looking back, that probably was pretty heavy indicators of MS implications. And then there were a lot of things afterwards. At the time, you didn't pay much attention to, but looking back, definitely were indicators that you were having some type of neurological disorder at the time. I was teaching a class one time, a drafting class, and I was talking to the class, really thought I was going well, and all of a sudden just went blank. I don't know where I was going, or anything in between. So then I just had to cut out and, well, get to work, kids, because we'll get back to that. So there were a lot of indications along the way, but it's a lot easier living life looking back and reflecting on, oh, I should have, than being aware at the present moment.
When did you first notice that you had MS?
He had tickling in his hand for years, from very early on in our marriage, but it wasn't until June of 2010 that he started to have some, more symptoms, and he was diagnosed in July of 2010.
We were dating, and he had gone to New Hampshire for a pool tournament, and we were in communication, and I know that took a lot of fatigue out of him. And so I think that's when he kind of mentioned the fatigue for the first time. I really didn't see it. And then when we lived together, it was more watching him go through the treatment, and the different meds that they were putting him on. So I don't really know what was MS and what was side effects. But he did struggle, and that was like a roller coaster of about 7 years, I think. So now that he's not doing medications and he's controlling it through diet, you see MS appear in different episodes. So it's more apparent now because there's nothing to compete with.
My husband, Kent, in 2004, he was having some numbness and tingling around his lip, and he went to the doctor, and the doctor had said, that's not so normal, and sent him to a neurologist who said, maybe you ought to get checked. And so we went and had a spinal tap, and he actually kind of indicated positive. There's no solid test for MS, that he had MS. And looking back, there were some other symptoms that we probably could have noticed earlier, like when we were cycling and he'd be leaning forward, his shoulder would go bad or go numb, or his back would go out for absolutely no reason. But we didn't really attribute that to anything because we didn't know.
Kind of a long story, but I'll make it short. We went to high school together and we're friends in high school. So once we graduated, it was a year after we graduated, he called out of the blue and invited me to dinner to let me know that he was recently diagnosed with MS. So that's how I originally found out.
How did you react when you were first diagnosed, and how did you cope with this new discovery?
Disbelief, skepticism, because I went in there and I had no real symptoms of note other than this cold sensation, and I went in for MRIs and when they came, at some point a neurologist had looked at my MRIs and he said, okay, it's not a brain tumor, it's not ALS, it's not all these, he listed off all these other things, but he goes, but I do think it might be multiple sclerosis. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not sure that I'm buying that, just because I didn't have any significant symptoms, but within a couple of years, the symptoms had ramped up enough, and I'm like, okay, he was proven right. So I guess skepticism was kind of my initial. Later, I had some doctors tell me that I was going to be unable to walk or travel in about 10 years due to MS. And my attitude kind of coming out of that was, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to follow those instructions. So I kind of came out with this get healthy or die trying kind of approach that for the last 10 or 12 years really has been how I've tried to handle MS and finding a solution.
Hearing it from a doctor was better than from like on my charts where I could read it, and then I just was numb for the whole night. I couldn't really sleep. I was just like thinking, like, I've only seen someone in a movie and a TV show who's ever had this. I just like, this, it can't be happening to me. I'm not one of these people that ever gets sick. I can't have it.
At that time, back in 1984, I knew nothing about it. And of course, I initially was thinking muscular dystrophy, just because of the initials, I guess, the whole Jerry Lewis thing. But I was fortunate enough to go to my my childhood doctor, who decided to run a couple of tests on me and didn't get an answer, so he sent me to a neurologist, and he threw me in something new at the time. It was called an MRI, and that's when they diagnosed me. So I was a little freaked out about it, and I started looking into it as much as I cared to look into it at the time. But I was basically asymptomatic for several years after that.
Well, I was in denial, thinking that I could probably get over it at some point. I thought it was something that you could just get over. And for the longest time, I ignored it. So I really resented people who would come up to me and say, "Oh, how's your MS?" or "How is the treatment going?" or "How are you feeling?" And it'd be like, I didn't think about having MS until you brought it up. And so I ignored it for the longest time. And now I blame everything on MS. So if I forget something, or forget somebody's name, or if I lose my keys, I blame it on MS.
I guess I was accepting of the diagnosis. Generally, like, my personality, I don't really stress out about anything, and when something comes my way, I just kind of like, all right, well, now what are we going to do to deal with it? And I'm pretty much treated my MS diagnosis the same way. And my mom was diagnosed with MS a year before that, and so it's still kind of familiar with the MS diagnosis. And I guess I was just relieved to actually know what was going on.
The diagnosis I got in November, right, when it was officially called MS, it was very odd. Well, maybe not as odd as I think it should be. I was actually relieved because I finally knew what I had. So I didn't go through what you might see in YouTube videos. You see people talk about the devastation and they break down and cry in the doctor's office. No, I actually left the office saying, okay, now I know. And then afterwards, maybe 3 or 4 days, I said, oh no, this is not a good thing. But yeah, the diagnosis in 2016, that didn't freak me out either. I was just, okay, that's what I have, I'll just deal with it. The 2016 diagnosis was a lot less severe than MS too. So
at first, I really didn't believe it. I didn't know what MS really was. First, I just thought it was for people that were older. I was, maybe 32. I worked out all the time. I thought they just had the wrong person. I kept saying, I think you got the wrong guy. And they're like, no, you have MS. And then I just kind of like joked it off for a couple of days. I was in the hospital. I mean, I wasn't really taking it to heart. And then one night, a doctor came in and he kind of asked me, do you have any questions about the diagnosis? And I was like, yeah, what does MS really mean? Like, what's this, what's my outlook, look like? And he basically told me, he's like, you could end up in a wheelchair, you not be able to walk, your brain won't function the same, all these different things. And that really hit home once he started telling me that. And he basically just left the room and left me there, thinking about all these different things. And I was definitely very scared. I started Googling stuff, which was probably the worst thing I could ever have done, because there was so much negativity online. So I was definitely scared, and I kept wondering, what I did that, I deserved this. It's definitely a scary couple months in the beginning.
When I went to the doctor, we went through some things. This was even before the neurologist. And he said, you know what, I don't want to concern you or scare you, but it sounds like MS. And I'm like, okay, what's MS? Never heard of that. And he said multiple sclerosis. And I said, okay. And he says, well, I hope I'm wrong, but if I'm not, it's not going to kill you. It might be a little challenging at times, but it's not going to kill you. So I'm like, okay. I was with my wife, and he says, what I don't want you to do is I don't want you to go home and get on the computer and look it up and, and see what it is. So what do you think the first thing I did when I got home? Yep. Looked on the computer, and I'm looking at all the different symptoms, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I got this, I got this, I got this. Oh my gosh. And in the meantime, he had scheduled an appointment with me for a neurologist. He was not an MS specialist. So I did the whole, 2.5 hours, 3 hours in an MRI, and then came back, a few days later, met with the neurologist, and he came into the office with my wife and I, and he says, it's not every day I tell a 37-year-old man he's got MS, but you have MS. And I was kind of preparing myself. So it really wasn't, I had a lot of things going on that day, and I was more concerned about that I had a meeting that started in an hour, 2 hours. So I needed to get this appointment wrapped up. And then he said, I need to go to my office real quick. He came back into the examination room or whatever, patient room. And he said, okay, you're going to need to take one of these injections for the rest of your life. It was Copaxone. And it was the injection where you give to yourself every day. And at that point, I was like, wow, this is real. And again, I wasn't really thinking, all I kept on thinking about is like, all right, I got to get out of here. I got a meeting that starts very soon. But my wife was with me, and obviously she was very upset, concerned, and things like that. I still hadn't realized the totality of what MS was. And, that was back in 2004. And there was no social media, there was no Facebook, no Instagram, nothing. And so there was no, nothing that there's, now where there's so much information and things like that. So that's how it happened.
I initially, so the appointment before, the nurse called and she said, you need to bring a family member with you. And that's the appointment that I thought I was going to get diagnosed with something that they tell you got 6 months to live. And oh my gosh, you got to live life to the fullest and all this other stuff. And just being the best version of myself or doing stuff that I hadn't done before. And then I ended up, the next appointment, that's the one that they said you have multiple sclerosis. I did fine with it. And then with every single diagnosis that first you get hit with it, it's sort of a sigh of relief that, hey, I know what's wrong with me. But then when you leave, at some point you have the grieving process that you go through. And I had to go through that grieving process and working on myself to help me get to a better spot mentally. The general diagnosis I was fine with, but afterwards you have to go through that grieving process, everything, and deal with, hey, this is what life looks like going forward.
Well, when I finally got the diagnosis, it was slightly relieving, right? So it was a big effort. So like I went through the whole thing, and then I started to think I was crazy because every doctor said they didn't believe it was MS. And then when my mom fought for me to get my MRI, and they found the lesions, actually, I started to cry because I had just finally gotten myself to think that maybe I wasn't sick. And then when they found it, I realized that I was sick again. And so then I had to go through the whole grieving process again. But once I got the actual diagnosis done, it was kind of relieving because I no longer had to battle with the thought process of it being psychosomatic or a legit illness, right? Because when you first start going through MS, especially when you don't have it super severe, that's kind of what you battle with. You battle with not really knowing if it's because doctors and everyone say, oh, you're being a hypochondriac, or oh, we can't really see what's going on, or oh, right. So you start to question your own validity. And so I really think that that's what kind of made it easy for me, just knowing that I wasn't crazy. That's what kind of helped me be able to grieve with the process of it. And having family. I mean, I have 3 other people in my immediate family with it.
I cried. I cried a lot, EJ. I didn't believe it. I didn't know what MS was. I got a second opinion. I got a third opinion. I got my MRIs. I got spinal tap. I learned about MS. I thought, I resisted and I denied, and my decline was so fast. I have been in a wheelchair for 10 years already. So, and I've only been diagnosed for 17. So within 7 years, I went from walking to a cane to crutches, to a walker, to a wheelchair. And that's within 7 years. So I was really getting slapped around. So I had some very, very dark days.
How has MS changed your daily life?
It has been changed a lot. Of course, before the MS, I was, installing DirecTV. I was working, long hours. I was playing in a big pool league, pool tournaments. I was able to do a whole lot. After the MS diagnosis, I had to relearn a lot of things. I had to learn my new limitations. I was no longer able to work full time, or even really playing long pool tournaments anymore. And I pretty much just had to learn how to pace myself, per se. And it's really, in the beginning, I was a lot worse than what I am now. And the fatigue was really big. Heat intolerance was a major factor, and it just changed my everyday life to the point where I couldn't really schedule multiple things, you know, for each day. Kind of had to learn how to space things out. Had to learn when my best times of the day was. For me, it's like the morning, anywhere from 9 to 1 o'clock. From 9 in the morning to 1 p.m. Is my best time of the day. Anytime after that, I start to slow down, and it just yeah. So it's been a learning process, definitely, over the last 14 years.
Well, I make the best of what it is. I'm still pretty motivated. I stay engaged in the community. Since I can't be in the schools, I'm helping a bunch of community organizations. I'm on the school board. I'm on a assistance board for community members, homelessness and food needs, things like that. And I just slowed down and try to pace myself. And while I like reaching out and helping others, I also have become more concerned about focusing on myself.
Since the official diagnosis, I really don't feel like a change in my daily routines in terms of health. All through 2021 and up until the diagnosis at the end 2021, I definitely feel worse, and I hate that. I feel worse. What does that mean? It's subjective, but my walk is or my gait is wonky. I have a lot more MS symptoms in 2021, but my daily life in terms of what I do every day really has not changed much. Unfortunately, I do not work. So, I'm still at home. I maybe the only thing to really answer that question more directly is I don't walk as much as I used to. I find myself now not walking upstairs if there's an escalator. I will avoid doing longer walks is probably the biggest change.
It hasn't changed a ton. I'm not gonna go run 5K, but as far as doing everyday stuff or whatnot, that I actually, it's been more of a blessing for me than anything else, just because it helped me reshift my focus. Instead of day drinking on the weekends, I now spend that time working on myself and doing things and working on that next version of myself.
It's just a lot of laying around. Just fatigue is overwhelming, which I didn't even know what fatigue was when I was diagnosed. I just thought it was an excuse for being lazy and tired, but fatigue just ruins me. It's just, I have two teenage boys. One's graduating from college and one's from high school, actually, in the next couple of weeks here. And they were in sports their whole life. And it was difficult for me to get to all their sporting events, but it allowed me to spend more time with them. So that's just it. Other than that, I just have to think about the whole battery thing. You know, I have a certain amount of energy being a battery, and once I use that up, I'm done. So I have to be very careful what I choose to waste that battery on.
Well, EJ, I've had this for, 17 years practically. So, it's hard for me to think about, oh gosh, what was it before? I mean, I remember, hey, being able to get on, one of the things I miss the most is, on Saturday mornings, I would go for a bike ride and get on the bike. And, I did a lot of biking with my girls and things like that. And at that time we lived in Florida, and we'd go, ride down to the beach and ride all sorts of different places and things like that. Now I necessarily can't. I mean, it would be different and things like that. But as far as what it looks different, I guess because I've just adapted over these last many years. And so this is just the new reinvented me. And so I don't dwell on what I don't have. I dwell on what I do have, again, family, friends, and things like that.
I sometimes don't want to get out of bed in the morning. It's a difficult thing for me to consider sometimes just getting out of bed, and I have a lot of pain. I don't sleep well. I get up to go to the bathroom about 10 times a day. Last time it was only 6, but I count it. And of course, it's harder to get back to sleep. I feel like I can't keep up. My family goes on walks. I did it yesterday. The family went out to this museum, and they were always far ahead of me, and I was always trying to keep up. And it's like, oh, damn it. And I mean, now I have the brace that I have to put on. So when I'm driving, I can't drive with it, but I put it on when I go to the dog park and walk around with it in the dog park with my cane. So I'm a little bit slower. So I have to add like half an hour to every trip that I go on, and every schedule that I have to make, I have to add a half an hour to it at least.
I've had to slow down. I was a very outgoing person, workaholic, I guess you could say. I used to work in DC. I would ride the train every day. My days started at about 5 o'clock in the morning, and I would get home about 8 o'clock each day. So I had basically a 15-hour day with 4 hours of commuting to back and forth to DC. And what I've noticed is that I need to really slow down and conserve my energy so that I can make it through the day.
Quite a bit, I suppose. I mean, prior to diagnosis, like I said, I had just started a business. I was recently married. I had two young daughters from a prior marriage. So, I was doing all the things that you would do when you're a young dad, young entrepreneur, mowing the yard, going on business trips, taking trips with the family, things like that. And a lot of that has changed. I still do some travel with family and things, and I just did an adaptive ski trip, which was really awesome, and we've done other trips too. But I don't mow the yard so much anymore. A lot of other activities are a little bit more restricted and carefully planned. I can't take a long walk and stuff like I maybe would have done in the past.
I was a lot more active before MS, and then MS kind of made me sedentary.
It's taken my freedom. I was once a very active person. And, once you're a paraplegic and you get into a wheelchair or you depend on a wheelchair, even though I am still mobile and still able to drive and work and get to and from places, it takes so much more effort than being able-bodied and being able to just come here and there. you don't even think about it when you're an able-bodied person. You just think, oh, let me run here, let me run there. I don't shop anymore. I online shop. I can't run to the mall. I can't, or I can. But it's such an effort to do it when you're in a wheelchair. And like I said, then I have to watch my timing. So it really has. It has changed my entire life. Thankfully, I was able to reinvent a life and say, okay, I am no longer working full-time. I am no longer the retail god that I once was, but I'm still in retail. I can still do a job, and I can still have my friends, and no, I can't go out and party with them like I once did, but they can come over and we can party here. And thankfully they've hung around and they still interact with me. But it's just not the same as it once was. Now, granted, I'm 20 years older than I was when I was diagnosed. But it's just not the same. It's just not the same, EJ. Now, like I said, 20 years has passed and I've grown a little older and a little wiser. So I'm not the same. But man, what a humbling experience when you have to depend on, now I have to depend on other people's time. And for things that I used to do.
What types of things trigger your MS?
For me, it's either I could be a weatherman. Barometric pressure changes affect me. Heat, humidity really affects me. Or if I overdo it physically or mentally, it has effects.
Definitely the heat and emotional stress, no question. Those are the two biggest components.
I'm a big heat sensitive person. The summertime just kills me. I tend to hunker down during the summertime. I have relatives down in Tennessee and I always go visit them, but I must go early in the summer. I always go like in May because I can't go in June or July. It's just too dang hot for me.
Only the heat. I've noticed if I'm doing anything outside, I'm exhausted afterwards. Even the cold now, I've noticed, during the storms that we had this winter, if I'm outside shoveling or, doing anything physical for a while outside in the cold, it takes everything out of me. Stress. I mean, I'm in a high stress job and some days I just get super overwhelmed with it. And, I'll sit there and my eyes will it's like my first thing I can tell that the MS is starting to get triggered a little bit. My eyes will just start fading out or, I get that blurred vision, that double vision.
Stress, heat, those are probably the two main things in almost any type of stress, right? Not just mental, but like even physical. So like just walking up and down the street, all of a sudden my spasticity and my numbness will get in where the cognition issues will get harder. And then obviously overheating is a very big thing. And that really affects the same thing, the numbness and the cognition.
Heat. You get a hot room. In fact, in the old days, when they before they had scientific equipment, when they were trying to diagnose MS patients, they sometimes would throw us in a hot bathtub to see if our symptoms magnified, and that was a trigger. So if I'm in a hot room, if I work out, if I get a fever, anything like that, all of a sudden my walking and ability to use my hands and things like that is compromised. Stress, inflammation, some other things like that can also kick it up, but I think heat is the most obvious for me.
Well, right now, it's mainly like high stress situations that trigger my MS. In the beginning, it was more like, heat. Anytime it gets up above 70, 74 degrees, I start to melt and my brain shuts down. So heat intolerance was a big thing. Just, overdoing it, like trying to do too much in one day would trigger, my MS. But now this thing is like high stress situations, like had a few deaths in the family where I've had, small episodes afterwards or during that time. And yeah, it's just mainly stress right now that triggers my MS.
Heat is a bad trigger for me. If there's a prolonged series of days that are not above 90 degrees here in California, it's a real problem for me. I don't have air conditioning in my house, but I go to people's houses that have air conditioning. I used to have a pool at the house that I was living in, and I don't have that anymore. So it's a real problem to make sure I stay cool. That's the biggest thing. And stress is a big indicator too. Even though I was a journalist and had a lot of stress at the job, for me, stress is not having anything to do and not having goals or activities. And that's more stressful for me.
Just noticed this as of late, is the later in the day that it is, the more I tend to lose my energy. I'm much more functional early in the morning, before noon, maybe 2 o'clock, somewhere after 4 or 5, I have a lot of troubles physically. And I've just noticed that as of late.
And stress.
Heat, humidity. I've always wanted to retire to Florida. I had these great grandeur ideas of being a Walt Disney World cop or security guard. However, the heat and the humidity kind of put me into a brain fog, and I almost have like this out of body experience where things are going on in the room around me. People are talking to me. I can hear them, and I think I'm acknowledging them, but the people around me say that I am not. It's kind of like when you're dreaming and you try and yell for help and nobody can really hear you, or nothing comes out of your voice. That's kind of the experience that I get. So I know that heat definitely is a trigger for me. Stressful situations, stressful financial situations have a big impact on me. So what I try to do is I really try to plan a lot of my day, try to look at my day, look for things that could be stressors, and try to mitigate the stress, in activity. And then extraneous exercise. One thing that I can't do anymore really is mow the lawn. So my family has to help me out in that situation. And I know that when I overexert myself, that I'm going to pay for it later.
I haven't really been able to identify any specific trigger, but I think that it's a pretty generic trigger when I'm more tired, or if I've walked more than I should have, it gets worse. But it seems that when I get an attack, it's out of the blue. Yesterday there was no reason whatsoever for my legs hurting as bad as they did. I didn't do anything differently. I just had a lot more leg pain. So I really have not been able to identify any specific trigger yet.
So alcohol triggers it. About a year and a half ago, around Thanksgiving, Christmas time, that I ended up having some alcohol. I just wanted to see what it was. And I felt MS hug. And that definitely led to a lot more inflammation. If I eat stuff with a lot of spices in it, different food, like in Louisiana, we do crawfish boils, and the way that everybody makes it, I can feel a lot more inflammation. If I drink something that can cause inflammation, or eat something that causes inflammation, I can definitely feel it. And I used to smoke cigars pretty regularly, probably once on the weekend or whatnot. And I tried smoking 3 times before, and my MS always progressed, and it seemed like it got worse.
Is heat also an issue?
Heat, not so much, because I work outside, that I know heat is an issue for a lot of guys who have MS, guys and gals who have MS. But because I've worked in construction for so long, I learned that when my body had gotten acclimated to it, it might have slowed down a little bit, but as long as I stayed hydrated, it really wasn't that big of an issue for me.
Would you describe MS as an invisible disease?
Every disease is invisible for the most part.
100%, absolutely. I'm told that constantly, that nothing looks like it ails me from just about everybody I come in contact with, including my family and my friends since junior high school. They tell me I look fine, and other than me being tired, they would never notice it.
I would, yes. Mainly because somebody would not know that I had MS if I didn't tell them, because, I no longer use a walker or a cane, for walking assistance. And I do present myself very well when I go out in public. And so people don't generally see, my daily struggles that I go through. And, I also don't think that they would recognize my cognitive problems that I have.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. There are some visibilities that are pretty obvious. I mean, if you watch me walk or something like that, you're like, okay, that guy's has got an issue with that. But there's also a lot of pain and muscle spasticity and other pressure that MS takes that no one sees. So it's a mix, and every MS patient is different. So that probably complicates it a little bit.
Oh, absolutely. Well, let me say this: yes and no. It depends on what particular case. So back in 2004, I didn't tell anybody. Only my wife and my kids knew, and my mom at that time. She was still alive, and my mom was pretty upset. She, had investigated a lot of things about what MS was. But yes, to answer the question, it was pretty invisible at that time, and it wasn't until about 7-8 years later where it started having a bigger effect on me, because unfortunately, at that time, there wasn't any really good medications out there. The efficacy was pretty low, but it was back in 2012, again, very high stressful job. And so it was in 2012, and I started using a cane at work. And because I had a left foot drop, and so I thought, I didn't go to a doctor and go get fitted for a cane. I just went to oldfashionedcanes.com and bought something that kind of looked nice, and just bought a couple canes so I could, so they look kind of cool. But it was that's when I started using it, and it was actually about that time when I had let my employer know what I had been diagnosed with and had for several years. So at that point, it became more visible. It was not invisible at that time. So living with it for about 7-8 years, and then I shared more, and obviously you could see more.
I would say very much it's an invisible disease, because a lot of the things are not physical, where others can portray what's, you're limping or dragging a foot or drop foot or things like that. A lot of it is vision, it's cognitive dysfunction, it's fatigue that it's hard to describe. It's not like being an athlete and overdoing it fatigue. It's just the motivation, the getting the engines. I always told my doctor, it's like my lawnmower or my chainsaw. I have to choke it to get it started. And once it's running, I'm pretty good. But as soon as I shut it down, it doesn't start up again. And, people don't realize that. They think you're trying to take it easy, be lazy, those types of things. So I would definitely say that it is very much invisible. And having a disability placard for parking and stuff, you really get challenged quite a bit if you do utilize that. And I think that's, a shame as well, but it is what it is.
So it took a while to get diagnosed, but I did finally.
Would you describe MS as an invisible disease?
Absolutely, it's an invisible disease because there's so many people who would tell me, "Oh, you have MS. I can't even believe that you look so okay." And I don't know what people think people with MS look like, but they have some kind of perception that we're all going to be in wheelchairs or we all have canes. I am now walking with a cane and a brace for the first time. I used to keep it a secret, but and even now, friends of mine who see me with a brace say, "Oh, you injured yourself? Are you gonna? How long are you going to be on that brace, or how long do you have that cane for?" And because of the pandemic, they haven't seen me in 2 years, and they didn't know that I am walking with that now. But I don't post Facebook pictures of me with it usually, and so it's becoming less invisible for me, but it's completely an invisible disease because people don't know what it means. I mean,
it's invisible to most people, I would say yes. But if you ask my wife or somebody that lives with me every day, they'll tell you it's not invisible. You can see it on my face when I'm going through something.
What parts of your body and mind have been affected the most by MS?
Well, parts of my body, definitely the legs. That's probably the most standout MS or clearly MS related symptom.
For me, it's the ability to use my hands and feet primarily. I have my type of MS is a little bit different than a lot, and that most of my lesions are in the brainstem and spinal cord as opposed to in the brain itself. So that just because I'm kind of a partial spinal cord injury patient is effectively what it turns into. So in the same way that somebody that was in a very bad car wreck or dove into a pool and broke their neck or something, I can't really feel my hands. I can't particularly feel my feet. Well, I can walk and I have grip strength and stuff, but that's the main part of it.
My MS has primarily affected my eyesight. Prior to diagnosis, prior to optic neuritis in May of 2010 in my right eye and my left eye, I did not wear glasses. So, and when I got optic neuritis, they originally thought that maybe I had a sinus infection and stuff. My vision kind of started to go. My family and I went for a hike over Memorial Day weekend of 2010. I was tripping over rocks and I scratched it off as I didn't see those rocks. Well, what had happened was I was losing my field of vision. And so I didn't even see the rocks that I was tripping over.
My left leg isn't really weak. It's just makes me unbalanced, and I have very terrible brain fog that I can't like get my words out. But other than that, I'm pretty good, well off.
I'm a lot more wobbly. I have drop foot, so I live in a house with a lot of stairs. It's a big problem. I am not able to walk or run as much as I used to. I have some sexual dysfunction. I have a lot of back problems, and I sometimes have cognitive problems. I forget things, or I have stuttering problems where I can't think of the word.
my legs and my arms?
Really, the physical aspect, what impacts me is, as I share with a lot of folks, is I have spasticity. The majority of it is below the knees of my legs. So, I always say it's kind of like the Tin Man who doesn't have enough oil. And so, my legs will walk very stiff and things like that. So it takes me a little bit to get them activated and relaxed and things like that. I finally do. And, I walk much better and smoother by the evening time. So it takes a good, 9-10 hours and things like that. But that's my biggest issue, the stiffness of my legs. I'm pretty fortunate that my cognitive was really never a big thing. There was times.
The right side of my body, like a stroke victim, ends up being affected the most. I sometimes have to use the cane. And then kind of my cognition. So having what's called the Dawson finger along the corpus callosum of your brain causes you to have cognitional issues. So it's hard to pull words to the forefront of my head or grasp sometimes what people are saying or what I'm reading. And even some of the hardest ones are trying to get my brain to stay on track with what I'm saying, right? Sometimes, like just at the doctor's today, I was trying to tell them all of my issues, and like right in the middle of it, it was like my brain just no longer had any of the data that I had already held on to, right? And I was in the middle of saying, and it just stopped. And I literally have to like give into it because there's no way getting it back. If you try to even think, it just makes it even harder. So it gets very frustrating to communicate.
And I had a relapse in February 2017, and I had what's called INO, or internuclear ophthalmalasia, in my right eye. And well, I guess it's not technically my right eye, it's both eyes. That is actually, my right eye would pivot, and it was like trying to track with my left eye. So I was creating double, triple, and 8 vision.
Well, my mind, like I said, definitely the cog fog. Like a lot of times I have a hard time concentrating. I get very overwhelmed quickly, which never was the case before. I get anxiety. And then physically, my eyes are the worst part. I mean, I'll get like almost like blind. The double vision gets so bad. The past year, my limbs get like tingles in them. They get almost like, kind of like if your hand falls asleep, but it's like both hands, legs, all the way up to like my waist will just go numb. It's a very strange feeling. It's, it gets scary with that stuff.
If I try to pick up something off a desk that is flat, like a paper clip or something like that, with my left hand, I can't do it. I have a hard time turning pages of a book with my left hand because I can't feel the pages, and I will grab 15, 20 pages at a time. I have gone through the drive-through and I've squeezed a cup so hard, that the cup is spilt because I couldn't feel the pressure that I was putting on the cup.
So my left side is affected the most, and like my left hand doesn't work as good as my right hand works. And my gait it was affected early on. It's gotten better. And the drop foot, early on, it got that was pretty serious, and that's improved. And then the things that I've noticed memory wise, so I've had 2 pretty serious concussions in the past, and I noticed that with those concussions that I'll have a conversation with somebody and I'll have a thought, it's on the front of my brain, but it doesn't come out. And I've definitely felt that that's probably that's been affected a little bit more with MS. And at times there's been brain fog in the past and different things like that before MS that probably wasn't there. So between all of that, that's all the things that I've noticed with MS. That my vision's been affected a little bit. Some everybody tells me it's because of old age, but I'm pretty sure that some of that's due to MS, and that'll get better over time as my body keeps on healing.
Well, I know that my strength has been a bit of an issue in the beginning. My walking was a bit of an issue in the beginning. And then, yeah, the cognitive is one of the big things. And, my left eye is affected by the MS. And it just, so the left eye thing is when I go get my eyes checked, they don't find anything wrong with it. There's nothing wrong with my vision when I go get it checked, and they're looking in there. But my brain seems to, or the signals from my eye to my brain they get scrambled, and so I really can't see a lot out of my left eye. And that's one of the things that MS has changed a lot. And yeah, definitely the cognitive thing is I don't really retain a lot of information, especially new information. And I also have a hard time remembering my past. And I can never remember conversations. Like 2 minutes after this interview, if I went downstairs and tried to explain to Kimberly about it, I would have a hard time explaining it to her. So that's how that's affected.
It's hard to identify the most because sometimes it's physical, sometimes it's cognitive, and there's no forewarning. It just comes and goes, and you deal with it as it comes because you can't anticipate tomorrow. So you just live in the present and go that way.
Definitely my legs physically, my mind, my cognitive thinking, my memory, my short-term memory is atrocious. I just have a really hard time retaining current affairs. I'm a little better with longer time memories than I guess you could say, but definitely short-term memory.
What has MS taken away from you professionally and in your personal life?
My future career, which was illustration and graphic design.
Oh my goodness. Well, I used to be a retail guru. I was once in charge of about 13 stores here in the Baltimore, DC area. And I am now resided to being a part-time person at one store. So it's taken a lot from me professionally. It's taken a 5-year relationship from me because my partner simply couldn't deal with the fact that I had MS and was losing control of my being able to walk.
Well, I am on disability. I had kind of, like I said, I had a hard childhood. So when I got older, I was hoping to be able to get myself back on track and actually try to start to work. And once I got my mental health under control and started to go back to work, the MS got so bad that I no longer could go to work. So it kind of, a big progress in my life, I ended up having to take a big step to the left to get used to being disabled continually because of that. I was quite active. I liked hiking. I liked camping, right? Four-wheeling, building with my hands. I'm also I like to act and stuff like that. And because it progresses, right? So over the years, you just start to lose the ability or drive to do those things because it gets too hard, right? I no longer can camp because it just takes too much to carry everything and set up the tent. And then hiking, sure, I can go for maybe like 20 minutes on a walk, but then I'm pretty much dead for the rest of my day. And I mean, then I do push through it, right? Like I go swimming still, and I try to, I live in Hawaii, so of course I'm going to try and see as much of this beautiful island as I can. But it does make it hard to, right? I don't no longer am the active person I used to be able to be.
Had to retire because of my MS. I was not able to run around to interviews and sit in meetings for long periods of time. My last job was more entertainment oriented, so I was doing red carpet arrivals, standing a lot. Can't do that anymore. So I was kind of forced into retirement about just when the pandemic started, and I got on disability. One of the hardest things I think for me to do was to give up my surfboard. I had a classic surfboard. It was 10 feet long, 3 feet wide. It was huge. And I loved surfing Malibu. Certainly having personal relationships. I'm on the dating scene again. And, you know, to tell the person that you're dating for the first time that you have MS, it's like, at what point do you tell her or him, and what do you say about it? And, you know, a lot of times I've found out recently that a lot of times that's a deal breaker. They don't want to deal with somebody who has it.
Professionally, if I was in a career that I loved, even though it was a very high stressful job. I was in the hotel resort business since '93, and it is a high stressful job, and I loved it. You know, I loved the clients I worked with. Sometimes the management, you know, would get a little challenging and things like that, but that's a whole nother conversation. But no, I loved the position and I loved the job that I did. I just couldn't continue doing the physicality because of the high stress and the emotions of that job anymore.
Professionally, not much. I still work full time. I work from home. I'm actually doing this interview from my workspace right now. This is my work environment. I've actually been remote working for about 4 years now, 5 years. There was a time on one medication that I was on that I had some side effects that I needed to make sure that, you know, I had bathrooms close by and things like that. But professionally, I have been able to maintain the level of excellence that my employer expects.
As far as professionally, how it affected me, like I said, I was a high school shop teacher and athletic coach for over 30 years. And because of the progression of the debilitating things that were happening, my vision, my manual dexterity, running machines and student safety and stuff, I basically retired on disability because I couldn't compromise myself or any of my students. So I just, I pulled the plug on that.
So professionally, it hasn't taken away a ton. Like, I work at a desk, so sometimes typing with my left hand's a little difficult. So I type everything with my right hand. And then, so I figured out the fastest way to type on the keyboard, typing with my right hand. And so, some of that, climbing up ladders is probably it's a little bit more difficult. Fun wise, I used to be huge, and I still am, but I don't really follow sports anymore. But like soccer and different sports like that, because running around is difficult, that I don't really play any sports. So whenever I've had the time, I've gone to judo classes and Brazilian jiu-jitsu classes, where there's activities and sports out there where you can stay active, and some martial arts and stuff. It just looks a little bit different, and you learn how to deal with that. And then as far as everything else, like as far as my personal life goes, that it really hasn't taken away anything from me. And it's more of a filter system. Like, I would go on a date with somebody and MS was a issue for them, that I would just go, MS is God's filtering system for me to figure out who the right partner is for me. And so so some things you just change the way that you think about it, and you change it from where it's something that holds you back to something that pushes you forward and gets you in a better spot in life.
Professional, that's a good question. Professionally, it's changed a lot. As when I was originally diagnosed, I was a technology entrepreneur. I traveled quite a bit. When I got diagnosed, that started to scale back. I tried to take fewer meetings that were far away, and my hours became a little bit more restricted. Eventually, I transitioned into teaching at university, but at some point the MS was too much for that even. So in the end, I've taken disability. So for professionally, I've kind of scaled back. Personally, the impact has been more on prior to diagnosis. I was like a mountain biker and a hiker, and did a lot of that kind of working out and things like that. And I can't do most of that stuff in the same way. So I do a little bit of cycling. I've adapted quite a bit to things that I can do, but those are some big changes.
Professionally, I mean, I did want to be a professional MMA fighter. I had to stop training anything where I got hit in my head. Even, I do jiu-jitsu matches. I do pro grappling. Even that, I'm sure, is like frowned upon. My doctor's not super happy about it, but that's what I grew up doing. I can't let MS take everything away from me. I still got to live my life. Professionally, as my job, like I said, doing PowerPoints, presentations in front of people, I used to be very quick on my feet. I used to be able to just, run through these PowerPoints and, nothing could really take me off track. And now it's, like I said, I get caught on a word or something, and it takes me a second to get back on track, or I might have to just skip a whole part completely because I completely forget what I was talking about. So that's definitely been the hardest part. I mean, I even had to find a new job during the past 4 years because the nuclear power plant I worked at closed. So just interviewing for a new position was difficult. I had to take a lot of preparation, make sure that I was ready for any interview question that came my way.
Wow. So professionally, it's taken away my ability to pretty much work a full-time or even like what they consider a part-time job because of my cognitive issues. And I used to, like I said, I used to install DirecTV and work in doing touchpads, lighting control, audio systems, stuff like that. I also used to run a kitchen in a restaurant. So I was used to, just fast-paced working. After the MS, I was not able to focus on more than one task at a time. And so like cooking it in a restaurant, you need to be able to read 4 or 5 tickets ahead of time and know what's coming up. And I couldn't get past that first ticket. Like anytime I tried to move on from that first ticket, I would forget what that first ticket said. And so that I got demoted from the line, and actually eventually just stopped working in the kitchen altogether. I've tried several times to go back to work in a couple of instances, and that just never worked out because I'd be given a few tasks to do, and as soon as I get done with that first task, I've already forgotten what the next tasks were, and so it's just a constant back and forth. Hey, what did you want me to do again? And sometimes as soon as I walk away and get out of the room, I would forget what they said. And so again, it's, going back, what did you say again? And I did learn that I needed to write a bunch of stuff down. So I would have to follow like your questions that you sent me. I actually had to write down some answers so that it would come to me a little quicker. Otherwise, I would be like a little slower to answer your questions, I think. And so that those things have really affected my professional part. That my inability to, I used to play pool, and make, quite a bit of money, playing pool. And that changed because now like my, I guess, stamina is not where it used to be. My brain gets really tired really fast. So needless to say, long pool tournaments and stuff like that just aren't in my cards right now.
My family knows that I have multiple sclerosis, and it impacts the decisions of what are we going to do today? Where are we going to go? How far are we going to drive? We have to think about a bunch of things that before a diagnosis and before symptoms really set in, we didn't worry about. And I can tell you, when I was first diagnosed, I went on to a DMT right away. I didn't know what my diagnosis meant, but I continued to live my normal life. I still continued to coach my son's soccer team. But as I've gotten older, and I don't know that it's MS or if it's age, but I think a lot of it is MS, I find that I really have to put a capacity. I need to put a governor on how much I try to do. So the impact on my personal life has been felt by me and by my family. We've just kind of adapted, and my wife has to check in with me to see how I'm feeling, because I don't vocalize exactly what I'm feeling on any given day. But we don't set expectations. We kind of live in the moment. I guess that would be the biggest impact on my personal life.
Oh, my job. It got to a point where I work as a glorified X-ray tech for 20 years, and it's a lot of lifting, wearing lead aprons, a lot of fine motor skills, because I was a special procedures technologist and a heart cath tech that I needed my hands for to carry and hold and apply delicate instrumentation. And it got to a point where it couldn't be done anymore without putting others at risk. So I went into some other parts of that job, computers and everything, but the fatigue got overwhelming. I have very little hobbies. I try to ride a bike. We live across the street from a park, and my hobbies now are walking the dog, and that's about it.
Yeah, work. That's the rough one there. I was a teacher, a special education teacher, and worked, and I'm only in my 50s. I was working like everybody else does in the world. And when things started to go funny in 2016, 2017, working the full schedule of teachers week, it was getting really rough. I was having a lot more vertigo attacks, just not feeling right. And the demands of where I was working, I could not do it anymore, because teaching is not just working from a start time to an end time. You have to go home and you have to correct exams, you have to plan for classes for the week. And in some ways your work day could be up to 10 to 12 hours, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So work was taken away from me.
Now, I need to make it clear. Having MS is not a death sentence. Most people with MS do not die from it, although studies have shown that it does shorten the life expectancy by 6 to 7 years. Some, however, can live full lives. The thing is, the quality of life is what's mostly affected, since no one wants to have someone always around to take care of them. So this is where the issue of mental health comes in.
Do you dwell on your own mortality?
I don't. There was a time, be honest with you, I thought about it more than once, meaning probably a couple times in a year, and that was probably 10 years ago. I guess when it was really affecting me, new symptoms or exacerbations, as they call them, were coming up. I started thinking about my mortality, especially when you have teenagers and you want to be around to see everything they do and all the successes in life. But I was lucky enough to be married again to a wonderful lady who had me look at things a different way, and she changed my attitude.
Kinda. Not really. I guess really you almost have to not, because if you do, you're going to become super depressed. And you're already going to be depressed because you're losing the ability to do for yourself, like especially at being 35, right? You're pretty much like a 50 or 60-year-old person with medical issues, even though you're a young child. And so you end up having to kind of ignorance is bliss of it so that you don't become overly depressed, right? So like I have to do things to not allow myself to think on that.
I'd love to say no. I like to be a positive person. However, I have sat on the couch many times and just started crying for no reason at all. I've told my wife, I told my son that my life is over. It's challenging. I am currently on an antidepressant, which helps moderate my speed, my reactions to things. It also helps to give me maybe a little bit more pleasant disposition. So, having had a mental breakdown in 2003, I was diagnosed in 2010. I don't want to say I know the signs of a bad place, but I've gone down that hole a couple times since 2010 with my diagnosis, but I have not been able to pull myself back up with the help of my friends and family. So mortality, I have dark thoughts. I'm not going to take my own life, but I'm realistic at the same time. I also know that people with multiple sclerosis do not necessarily have a shorter lifespan than other people. So the dark thoughts come from the limits that I know that I have to put on myself and the person, the father, the husband that I want to be.
To a degree. I wouldn't say I go around thinking like, oh, I'm gonna die from this disease every minute of every day. It's like the first question I have to my primary care doctor at the time was, is this a is this disease fatal? And he told me no. And I was satisfied with that. But, as I've researched it and whatnot, it's not fatal, but I read that you can die of complications from multiple sclerosis. It's gotten me to be really more active personal life, but besides that, I don't really think about it so much.
It didn't until I had a daughter. Now I have an 8-month-old baby, and as soon as I had her, I started thinking about a lot more what my future is going to be like. I want to make sure that my daughter and my wife are set up for the rest of their lives, and not knowing how long I'll be able to do a stressful job for, things like that, or what kind of income would come in if something did happen, or if I had an episode where I wasn't able to go to work every day. How that would be. So with the future so uncertain with something like MS, it's definitely a scary thing. So I don't ever want my family to have to take care of me. I think about it probably, every couple minutes. The thought goes through my head if I'm doing something where, you're always reminded you have MS constantly. You realize that the person you were before MS isn't the same person you are now. And it's something that you have to deal with. And, that's a hard thing to deal with at a younger age. To know that, sometimes you think you're like a shell of the person you used to be.
I do not. No. I pretty much go from day to day, and I figure, any day that I get up out of bed, it's a good day, and I just go on with, my routine. I try not to think of, what's going to happen to me, 2 weeks from now or anything like that. You know, Mainly because it just, I know, it just never really comes up in my mind, really. You know, uh, I guess I have a routine oriented thought process at the moment, and anytime I get thrown out of that routine, it becomes difficult.
I think that when I have those mood changes, the depression isn't specifically related to, oh boy, I have MS. But when I have an emotional issue about it, it's more like the fear of what's to come. And that produces, I guess, a type of depression or more sadness, or even an anxiety, but nothing, extreme that I can't somehow work through. But there are days when I wake up, especially if I feel more pain in my legs or if I'm walking more funny, I'm like, wow, I didn't expect this in my 50s. I didn't expect to have MS and all the things that go along with it. And I have little bouts of fear. I said, next year, is it going to be worse? In 5 years, am I going to be in a wheelchair? Am I going to be wearing diapers? And there's a lot of, unfortunately, there's a lot of information out there that you can read and watch so many videos on YouTube. And some of the information you get is frightening. But to the point of depression, I don't think so. It's more fear.
Not really. I mean, I'm not a particularly anxious person, and worrying about things that are going to happen ahead. At the same time, you realize as limitations come up and things are you can't do things maybe that you wanted to in the past. You do become a little bit more conscious of time and how much time do I have to do whatever, to take a trip, to run a business, to teach, to any of the things that you want to do. I guess everybody has that. I don't. Well, MS has had a pretty big impact. Most anything that's happened to me could happen to everybody by the time we're 60, 70, 80, 90 years old. So, it just happened to me sooner. So I think I probably have the same mortality considerations than anybody else does, but just, a little sooner.
Sure. Yeah. I, in fact, have designed and created my own tombstone already. And it has my name on it. And across the top, it says, still bringing people together, journalist, activist, uncle, friend. And it has a beginning date of September 1st, 1960, and it doesn't have an end date. And it has a pen in the middle because I was a journalist. On the back, it's a tombstone that's a couch. It's a replica of the couch that I had at my house, and 8 dachshunds that I've had in the past, and 1 future dachshund. And on the back, it actually says that I wrote about multiple sclerosis. It doesn't say that I had it, but it says that part of what I've written about is multiple sclerosis issues. So that's going to be on my tombstone, and I don't plan on using it anytime soon. And I know a lot of people think it's real morbid to do that, but I didn't want to depend on my family to create the tombstone for me. And it was more expensive than I'm sure they would pay for it. And I'm probably going to be paying for it long after I'm gone, or they will. But it's a piece of art, and I'm happy about it. And it sounds like a negative thing, but I know that I am not going to live the full extended life that most people have. That I think they recently said was 75. I'm 62, and MS chops a bunch of years off of that, and I'm kind of aware of that.
How do I dwell on my own mortality? I've gone through quite a bit with others, so I don't dwell on my mortality. I've come to accept it. My dad's 89, going to be 90 in November. I just lost a very close college colleague, friends for 46 years. Just lost him. I lost a couple other teacher friends that were younger than I was. And as I look at it, the one who died in July was so close. In fact, his wife and I were very close as well. And I said to her, looking at the future, and every book has a final chapter. We have to realize that. The hardest books to put down are the good books, the ones you really enjoy. But don't look at the book itself, because the end chapters, or what we believe are, it could be appendices and indexes and stuff like that. So enjoy it while it's there. But every book has an ending, and no matter what, we're never ready for it. I do not worry about passing. I've accepted it because it comes to everybody. I've been around it enough. When the time comes, hopefully it's relatively peaceful and quiet. I guess that's it. I mean, I'm hoping I get another 30 years of quality, but one day at a time.
I don't. Early on, I believe that going through the grieving process, that there was some stuff that I went through. There was a lot of praying. I'm a Christian. I work on my relationship with God, and I drew extremely close to God during that time. I mean, we're all gonna die, and I believe that heaven's on the other side for me. And then, but if you're Buddhist, atheist, or whatever it is, that I think that our own mortality is probably something that a lot of people that I've talked to, that they're more afraid of it when they know that it's a certainty. And I'll really know how afraid of it I am then. But I believe that I've got a short amount of time, and it's my job to make the best of it. So I don't fear death too much, because death's going to come at some point. And why fear it? I know it's going to come, and make the best of it and grow into the best version of myself.
I don't. Kind of going back to that, I'm a big believer in living every day to its fullest, so whatever that looks like. As an example, I was, my grandkids were over here for the last several hours, and I was just soaking it up, and I was on the floor with them, and enjoying their time, and and things like that. So I don't necessarily think too much of my mortality, no different than anyone else probably at my age. But again, it goes back to the earlier conversation, that I'm very cautious and conscious about whatever I do today is going to make a difference tomorrow. And that could be exercise, that could be nutrition, that could be supplementation, that could be making sure that I'm drinking enough water, all those types of things, because those things are important to anybody. But when you have an autoimmune disease like MS, it's even more important.
Do suffer from depression at time to time. And it used to be really, really bad in the beginning. I was really depressed because I couldn't figure it out. The fatigue was really bad. I couldn't get out of my own way. Having to use a walker and a cane, to walk around with, losing the ability to do my job. Really set me in, it's really in a depressive state. There were a few times where, I didn't think, well, maybe people would be better off, if I was here, or, whatnot. But those thoughts never lasted very long, because I do have a son, and I do have, a really great cheerleader in Kimberly, and I always think of them, when I get down that far, and that usually will bring me out of thinking about that. And I haven't had any thoughts like that in probably like 6 years now, so it's been a while.
Sometimes, I think about I don't know. I think about death a lot more.
Yeah, you do dwell on your own mortality. But, you know, it's sometimes you wonder if you wouldn't be better off dead than being told you're going to spend the rest of your life not being able to walk, not being able to have an erection, not being able to control your bladder, sometimes not being able to control your bowels either. So, do you want, you have to completely reinvent yourself. And if you're not strong enough to do that, then yeah, you are facing your own mortality because you have to completely reinvent yourself. You are no longer going to be able to have the life that you had. Simple as that.
Do you feel like you have to try and hide the fact that you have MS?
Well, that's a good question. I don't think I've ever like intentionally hidden my MS, but I'm not really forthcoming with it either. I don't know if that really makes sense. No, it's like I do present well when I go out in public, um, or when I'm hanging out with friends. I try to present well. Um, but I also know my limitations too, and so I'm not ashamed of having to say, well, my brain's shutting down, I'm getting tired, I need to call it a day, or I need to lay down and relax, or so yeah, I don't think I ever really felt I really needed to hide my MS per se.
I did hide the fact that I had MS from my employer from 2010 until 2017. I felt I needed to because I didn't want to be judged. I am the person that my employer looks to for memory of situation, recall, deep financial analysis, deep data analysis, and I didn't want them to question my ability to do my job. When I had my INO attack in February 2017, I had no choice but to let them know what I was going through and why I was going through what I was experiencing, that I was aware of why it was happening. So I am pretty open now about my multiple sclerosis. I do not hide it. It is part of who I am. It is part of what I am. And I'm not ashamed of it anymore because I've proven to people that I am more than MS. I'm still Edward.
Constantly. Yeah. Every day of my life. I mean, like I said, you take a fight, you're never going to tell that opponent that you have MS. You're never telling your training partners you have MS. You go to the gym, you don't want people to look at you any different. You want them to think you're as strong as you are. I don't ever want my wife or my family to look at me as the guy with that MS. I want them to think of me as, the guy that she married that can do whatever, hopefully in her head she thinks I can do. I didn't, my daughter's young, but when she grows up, I don't ever want her to think, oh, my dad has a, debilitating disease. I want her to think this is my dad, and hopefully she thinks of me like as a superhero or something like that. Like I would hope she does. But yeah, I mean, I constantly am hiding that I have MS. I don't ever want anyone to think of me as somebody with MS.
Yeah, I was, because I used to put on my resume, or when I was a journalist, and they would have these bios. The last line would be, he also has multiple sclerosis, but he hopes you never notice. So I was always adamant about not making my disease something that people would have to ask about, because I didn't want to be defined by it. So I didn't ever want to use it as an excuse for getting off work, or to not be asked to go on a hike or something like that. But now I'm getting a little bit more reasonable, I think. But yeah, I guess it was not that I was ashamed of it. It's just that I didn't want it to be the something that defined me.
Absolutely not. No. I the first year or two of after diagnosis, because I was a young buck back then, I definitely did. I wouldn't use a handicap placard for driving or anything like that, and I try to keep it away from everybody. I worked out like I never had it. It's just one of those things that you don't want to share. But over the years of having it, I don't care who knows it. I don't. And it's not like I ask for a favor from anybody, but it's just if they care to find out enough or ask me, I'll share it with them.
No, I don't like to draw attention to myself. That's just a personality trait. I'm not that humble a person. I'm not uncomfortable speaking and being heard, but I don't like having attention drawn to me. So unfortunately, the cane draws attention, and there are people, which I'm very surprised. There are people who just come all out, right out, and just say, "What's wrong with you?" And it's a little awkward, because I mean, I answer it in a very broad way. I say, well, I use the cane just to help with my balance. But no, I don't hide it. I haven't hidden it with friends, with close friends. I said, well, this happened, but I'm not posting on Facebook as, oh, I have MS, how awful, and I know. I'm not being secretive about it, but I'm not telling the world about it. I'm not going to be the type of person ever to wear a shirt that says I have MS, all those jokey shirts that I've been seeing. No, I'm not going to do that. But it's nothing to be ashamed of, but I don't like to draw the attention, because people's reaction. Actually, here's a silly anecdote. When I was back home visiting mom and dad in December, I was with the cane, using the cane then. And a very good friend of mine from childhood, I figured, well, I could tell him, because he asked me why I was using the cane. So I got MS. And his first question was, well, how long do you have to live? Like, no, not gonna die yet. Don't think so. But it was just an awkward reaction. I don't blame him, but a lot of people don't understand MS.
I don't. If I'm in a place where I know me telling somebody that I have MS is going to hurt me, then I don't say anything. But I'm pretty open. If somebody asks me, hey, what's wrong with you? And I'm in a normal setting, then I'm more than happy to tell anybody that I have multiple sclerosis. And a lot of people don't even know what multiple sclerosis is. So I can change their definition of what it is in their brains and give them a good idea of what MS is, and help it so that a lot of people don't know. Some guys are on disability with it because it's progressed to that point. And a lot of people don't know how to deal with anybody who has any form of disability. That's one thing that growing up, I was around people who had disabilities, and I saw how my dad and my parents dealt with it. So that gave me a healthy understanding of what disability was. I knew people with Asperger's or Down syndrome, or who were in wheelchairs and had to be taking care of their parents. So I have a lot healthier idea on disabilities and mental health and all that. And that's helped me out with MS probably more than a lot of stuff, where this isn't really a disability or something that holds me back. It's something that helps me move forward, and it's not something that holds me back.
How has MS impacted your self-image?
My family has to mow the lawn for me. I enjoy mowing the lawn, but I can't. I try to pick cool days to go out and do it, and I still put myself in a bad place. I end up paying for it. A couple weeks ago, I mowed the lawn on a Friday, and I fell asleep Friday night at 7:20 at night. That's a far cry from the guy who, used to go out every Friday night after college and would be out until 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Now, granted, again, is that a 50-year-old man, 51-year-old man, or is that a guy with MS? It's probably a little bit of both, but it's a guy with MS who tried to do something that he knows he shouldn't do, but he wanted to consider himself to be a man and be the man of the family to do household chores. And that is difficult to accept. At the same time, I have to accept my limitations to be that best husband, to be that best father, to be that best friend that I want. And when I come up short and I try to do things that I know are going to put me beyond, I fall short for other people. And that is more disappointing than the embarrassment of not being able to complete simple household tasks.
Not much. I'm not an overly proud person, but I think my self-image is I just sometimes catch myself. I'm just not the same person. I used to love walking. My spouse and I used to do because they're called ecological hikes, where the bus takes you out in the country and you walk for 5 or 6 kilometers or more. And I used to love doing that, and that's just impossible now. So I guess that's probably the biggest change. I'm just not able to do as much as I used to.
Well, I have a huge self-image, so it would actually benefited me. It calmed me down a little bit. So I'm not out and about the way I used to be, but a lot of that's the relationship I have now with my wonderful wife. So it's hard to tell if the MS was settling me down or if it was the love of my wife.
I don't think I've really changed my self-image through MS. I still, I've always been a very positive person. I always have a positive attitude, positive outlook. I'm accepting of most everything that comes my way. And I think just remaining positive all the time. Like, I'm always smiling out in public, and I always like to say a smile is more contagious than walking around with a grumpy face. Because when you smile at somebody, then they're more likely to smile back.
It's hard. I mean, I don't think of myself as somebody with MS. I try to do things maybe in spite of MS. I probably go to the gym more now. I probably eat better now because of it. But it's something that, will just, if you think about it all the time, I could definitely see it becoming that's your self-image, is you are the guy with MS. And, that's something I don't ever want or anybody to judge me on.
What do you do to keep your head up?
I work. My work is everything to me. That was instilled in me by my father. I do what makes me happy, which is working, providing for my family, because whereas I might not be able to do household chores, I can still bring in a paycheck for this family.
I do, I help people out is what I do. Like, I can't do much, but what I can do, I try to do a little bit, for the people in my community. Well, the first thing I do every morning is I get up and I make Kimberly a cup of coffee. I start the day with a positive, and then from there during the pandemic I volunteered to deliver groceries and stuff for the elderly in my area, and that led me to meeting a couple of people that I've stayed in touch with. I have my adopted grandmother in the village. Her name is Lillian, and she just turned 93 in December. and I've been helping her for like 4 years every day. So I just try to, just try to help out whenever I can and where I can, and I think by helping others, it makes me feel better.
That's a good question. I I like to play poker a lot, and if it allows me, I'll spend the time I can doing that. It's a good distraction for me. Again, I relatively newly married, going on 3 years, and there's plenty to do around here as a new husband and getting my kids situated with their life, and that's about it.
Yeah, I gotta tell you, that's not easy. I get a little too much into my head, and I not working. I probably think too much. So my biggest escape is I'm a big book nerd. So my biggest escape is reading. I don't know if you're a reader, but a lot of readers, what we like about reading is you step out of reality and you get to dive into a book. Nonfiction stuff, right? And yeah, so that's my biggest escape. So to get out of my head, I'm not very good at that yet. I don't go any one day not thinking about having MS.
So because people aren't extremely positive, I was like, who around me is positive all the time? I was like, man, I don't really know anybody. So I went, where can I find positive people? I went, well, I was like, YouTube. I went to YouTube University. So I just typed in motivation or motivational speakers on YouTube. And every single morning when I woke up and when I had free time and before I went to bed, I just listened to motivational speakers. And I did that for maybe 3 or 4 months. I just told myself that it doesn't matter whether it's true or not. I'm going to change my thoughts. I'm going to brainwash myself into being positive and just believe it.
Now, it is a classic stereotype for the man to be the head of the home, the provider, the breadwinner, the fix-it guy, or however you want to say it. Of course, this is changing with the times, but in families with a father or husband with MS, others have to step up and this change is progressed. A lot of the guys in this video live off disability because they honestly can't work. This has heavily affected the classic family structure we have known for so long.
How has your relationship with your family been impacted?
I don't talk to my mom at all. I barely talk to my dad. My wife is very supportive, and so are my kids. But I know I have a hard time with them. They have a hard time with me.
It has made me really think about other people. One reason why I started taking the drug that I am for the antidepressant was, I started taking it as a regulator for my attitude or my reaction. I would fly off the handle and overreact to situations that were not important. I was giving what's the right word? I was not responding in like for the type of action that or statement that occurred. I'm taking a medication to help me slow down, to be a better husband for my wife and a better father for my son. My relationship with the two of them means everything to me. And I was on a crash course for a long time of not having them in my life. And they mean everything to me, and I need them. So I needed to do what I could to make sure that I wasn't ruining what relationship I had with my family.
That's a good question. I have my mother and my sisters. I'm the middle child. They live within the 5 miles of one another, all of us. And the one thing with my MS is I don't think any of them, well, nobody really does except for the people that have it. Nobody really understands MS, and including my mother, who I'm happy to say that she's still around. She's ailing, but she's older. never really understood the MS. She reads a little blurb now and then and she thinks she knows it. And that's including both my sisters. I mean, I'm not trying to take their life away from them to understand what ails me, but it would be nice if they spent a little more time to really find out what's going on. That being said, it's fractured a little bit, the relationship with my family.
Actually, it's kind of hard because, especially since most of me and my family have MS, confrontation can happen a lot due to the cognition and fatigue. I call it cranky baby syndrome because we all get so tired. And then when, little disagreements can turn into emotional uproars because you're so tired, right? And you're not grasping what the other person is saying. And so communication becomes a problem. So I end up literally, most of me and my family have had to split. I mean, they all live with each other, but they sit in separate rooms and hardly talk because it gets hard. The only time we ever really come together is when any one of us gets sick, because we all know how hard it is, right?
It used to be interesting. My nephews who grew up with me having MS would watch my partner jab this long needle into my thigh once a week. That was when I was on Avonex. Some of them would come with me to having the infusions, where I'm stuck to a infusion for 4 hours. And it's tough.
So I was married when I first got diagnosed with MS. And that was not a good picture, really. My ex-wife would always get on to me about, falling asleep on the couch, not having enough energy, not doing enough. And we were living with her parents at the time, and the noise in the house just got to be too much, and that's when I realized I had I can't find it, but anyway, so in 2009 I moved out of my ex-wife's house and moved in with Kimberly, and I was renting a room there. And it was shortly after I got divorced. And it really affected the way that I could be, I don't think I was much of a father figure for my son at that time, because I was still going through a lot of depression, guilt, just trying to learn how to manage the MS. And in the beginning, it was it's like I just couldn't get out of my own way, and so that affected that relationship. And we've since moved on. We're still friends. My son is now finishing his freshman year in college, doing great. We do have a good relationship. It affects my relationship with Kimberly, mostly my cognitive issues and the fact that I forget things. I don't really communicate very well most of the time. I don't delegate tasks very well, and it's just, and sometimes she'll get frustrated with me over because of that. And sometimes she thinks it's like a lack of empathy or sympathy, and it's just my brain is just too slow. It took her some time to realize that when she asks a question, I might not have the answer right away, like she's expecting. Like if she asks somebody else a question, they come right back with an answer. Whereas my brain goes really slow, and so when she asks me a question, I actually have to sit there and think about it for a little bit, and go over it, and then she starts getting a little impatient. But nowadays, she's actually learned more about my ability to do that, and so she's getting a little bit more patient with me in that area. So
I'm so blessed with my wife. She is so understanding and caring. And the Zoom group that your father's in and I'm in as well, she realized how good of a support network that is as well. I think it also takes some of the burden off of her, or she feels the relief from that too, that we get to share elsewhere. But I've been blessed with that. And, having lost a child, it's easy to adapt to almost anything else. And we made it through that rough road together. And now, the roles just changed a little bit, but we're on another rough road. We'll get through it.
99% of it's all strengthened it. It's a much better place. I have 4 daughters. My goal over 6 years ago, was to walk all 4 of my daughters down their wedding aisle. That's really all I cared about. I didn't care about, I want to run a marathon. I want to run a 5K. I didn't care about that. All I cared about was to walk all 4 of my daughters down the aisle. And I have been able to do that for all 3 of them. The 4th one is, she'll be 19 in a couple weeks, so we're still a little early on that. So that was really my goal. But to answer the question, yes, it's definitely strengthened my relationship with my wife and my girls. They're obviously understanding with, hey, dad's got this going on, certain situations. So they're not going to say, hey, let's go mountain climbing or something like that, because they know that's not something I would want to do, or that I could do.
Fundamentally, it's been a good thing, I think, which is probably seems like an odd thing to say. I think when a lot of people, when they get MS, a lot of marriages break up. A lot of people are worried if they can be a good parent with MS and do things. And I had those concerns, and those are legit questions. In my case, I think my wife has been a great support. I think my attitude has been fairly upbeat and try to figure out solutions. So I think that's probably helped a little bit that way, that that I try to make things as easy as I can on her and with my kids. They grew up seeing me have some of these challenges, and it probably changed some things that we were able to do together, but there were quite a few that we still did. I mean, we went on a trip overseas, and they saw me do 17 miles on crutches across countries and things. So I think at some level they're like, okay, there's some lessons to be learned here. So we've gotten closer because of it. But it can be challenging, and especially depending on how somebody's disability affects them, that the impacts can vary. So what worked for me, somebody else's mileage may vary.
My mother and father are both in their 80s, and we're from another country, and I'm not American. I think that with the country I'm from, nobody has MS, or I've never heard anybody talk about MS in my country. And so my mom and dad don't have a very good understanding of it, and maybe because they're older, they're just in a panic about it. They think it's a death sentence, and I think my mother is at that stage now. God bless her, but every day she says, "I'm praying for you." I wish I could take this away from you. So mom and dad are pretty freaked out about it. I try to calm them down. My brother has been incredibly supportive. He's older than I am, and he's been giving me suggestions about what I should do. I have a very small family. I have cousins back home that are really supportive. So yeah, everyone's been very cool. Just mom and dad are a little bit more freaked out about it than I wish they would be.
How has MS affected your relationship with him?
I think my ignorance to the cognitive part was a struggle, because I expected responses, kind of typical responses, and he has to kind of take it in and think about it, and might not even respond. And I thought that was kind of a character flaw at the beginning, but I do believe it's more of an MS cognitive thing. So that took me a few years to recognize that it's not a character flaw. It really is just a cognitive issue and the inability to really respond as quickly as, my frustration needed at the time.
I learned to quickly adapt to it to be something that wasn't going to affect our relationship in a negative way. I believe that all of us humans have something, and this was just something that was a part of Eric. It didn't define him completely. So aside from me having empathy for him and sympathy and compassion, it doesn't affect our relationship that much.
Yeah. So, at the beginning, it really, there was not a whole lot of impact to his health. So he was still able to walk and so on and so forth. And progressively, he ended up using a cane and having more and more numbness and tingling, more difficulty walking and so on and so forth. And we had some episodes where we had to go to the hospital. So in terms of our relationship, we're really, really lucky because we accept and love each other for who and what we are. I think we're kind of the anomaly when there's a chronic illness in the family. A lot of times it negatively affects a relationship, but he's so positive that he's easy to support. So, to the extent that it affected our relationship, it affected our ability to do things together that we love to do.
I would say we had a very traditional relationship before then, where he did kind of the man stuff around the house, and I did more of the cooking and things like that. And since then, I've had to take over some of the more physical tasks, like the mowing, which EJ is doing that right now, but I'm doing that, and he's taken over the cooking a lot more because I'm also working full time, which I wasn't before. So we've kind of switched up the roles a little bit here and there when we needed to.
How does his MS affect you?
I don't know that. I mean, we're going through this together. I have my own ailments, and he actually was my caretaker through some broken legs and a leg ankle fusion, which were a couple of years of rehabilitating. And I kind of feel like our roller coasters go in and out, and we both help each other. I don't know, since it's been 12 years, really life without it. It's just we take it day by day.
I think the biggest way it affects me is watching him not see what others see about him. I feel like MS causes him to lose some of his for lack of a better word, Ericness. In high school, he was a very gregarious person, and he still is. He's very outgoing, fun, friendly, smart. He's probably the wittiest person I know. But I saw MS chip away at his confidence, I would say.
I would say on a daily basis, it's strange to be the only one awake at 8 o'clock at night, that he gets exhausted quicker. When we've been out in public and he's had flare-ups, I've had to be the one, because he doesn't want to say anything to anyone or ask for any help. That I've had to be the one to go find somebody to get us back to the car, or a place for him to sit down, or where's the nearest exit. My husband is getting overwhelmed, and it's too warm and he needs to get out of this situation.
So it takes a little bit of a toll in that physically, I started doing all of the driving and making plans and things like that, which was not really too tough. The trips to the hospital were stressful and worrisome, but other than that, it didn't affect me too much. I think I didn't realize it until now, where as I've seen him decline, it's definitely caused me some sadness. And it's affected me in that we don't spend as much time together. So that has had a pretty big impact. But to the extent that if anybody could have MS, Kent is the most tenacious person I've ever met in my life. So he manages it brilliantly.
How has it affected your thoughts and future plans?
It doesn't affect my thoughts on future plans much, other than when we plan vacations, I try to most of the time plan around seasons, when it's cooler and not very hot places, which is different for, I think, both of us, because we both love tropical weather. We both love Hawaii. We've never been to Hawaii, and I do think we're going to venture there anyways, and if we have to stay inside, we will. But it's been fun for me to go to the cooler places like up north in Santa Barbara, and so it's been fun to plan around like that and discover new places to go. As far as like planning for events or baseball games, we always try to plan to purchase tickets on the end, or the movie theaters. We purchase things on the end aisles so that he can quickly and easily access the bathrooms, since that's a big part of his MS.
Well, it's affected our thoughts and future plans in a lot. I mean, we used to travel all the time. We need to rethink, like the house we live in now is a 4-story townhouse. We've had to get a house with an elevator in it for accessibility. So anything that we consider buying or renting or going to has to be accessible. We have a lot of accommodations that we have to make, whether it's the weather, whether it's accessibility, whether it's walkability, and so on and so forth. And then in terms of work, Kent is on disability right now, so I'm working full time, and hopefully, we're pretty solid financially, so I'll be able to retire as planned. But that was definitely a consideration for the future.
I think Caleb and I have a unique situation. Even when we're on the Zoom couple meeting, we're kind of the one couple that doesn't fit the typical situation, and we both in the last 3 years become orphans, so to speak, where we've lost our parents. Our siblings aren't real close, so we are our family. So it's strong.
It has made future plans more immediate. It's not 10 to 15 years when he retires that we're going to just do trips and things like that. We need to do them now while he can. Well, why we both can, but.
How has your family dynamic changed?
Oh, yeah, it's affected the family dynamic a lot. At first it did not, because we all were just like accommodating, and he was pretty low maintenance in terms of what he needed. When he got sick, it was scary for the kids, when he was having a flare up or something like that. And it was hard for me, just emotionally. But the family dynamic, I got sick a couple of years ago, and it threw the homeostasis of the whole family off, because nobody knew what to do. And we were so used to focusing on Kent that nobody knew what to do for me. And so it's really been an interesting learning experience for all of us, to see what happens when you've got two parents who are kind of compromised. But the kids, I think, are closer to him than ever.
I think both I and our son EJ have taken on a lot more of the things that he did. He did an awful lot of the physical work around the house, where I did more of the other kind of stuff. And there's just some things that he just can't do anymore. And if he does do them, he'll have an episode.
I don't think about the future in a negative manner. I think, again, we just take it day by day and deal with anything that shows up as it comes. I stress for other things in my life, I guess, the future with Caleb is not one of them.
You know, it really hasn't changed because Eric and my daughter would say I'm controlling, but I think I take on like a lot of our immediate surroundings to make sure everything is sanitary and clean. I'm not a good delegator to have people help me. Eric does a lot to help me, I think because he doesn't want me to do everything, but it's a delicate balance. His family, I think Eric gets disappointed because there's not a lot of support, like tangible support. They're in theory and in their hearts, I believe they are willing to help, but physically actually stepping up, it's we don't see much of them anymore. And I don't know if it's sometimes honestly because he's married now that they feel like he's taken care of, so they don't need to step up.
How has your social life been affected?
We end up not having a big social life because it's hard to plan with people, right? And not want them to think that you're being over dramatic or putting a downer on their fun time, right? So you end up not even really wanting to talk to people or hang out with people, or even when they end up not even calling you after a while because you drop out of doing things, right? So one of the other big issues is that, yes, socially you become kind of isolated.
I don't think it's changed. I mean, obviously I get tired real easy, just like everybody tell you with MS, you get that like MS exhaustion. So yeah, I mean, I'm not going out partying every night or anything like I used to when I was in my 20s, but I wouldn't be doing that now anyway. You know, if anything, sometimes you get to use it as an excuse that you're tired and you don't have to go to all these functions. But yeah, I don't know if it's affected it too much. I think all my family and friends know that, you know, if I'm tired, that I'm not going to make it, but it hasn't affected it drastically. You know, I still try to get as much time with my friends and everything as I possibly can.
Well, I'm not very social anymore at the moment. I used to play on a pool league, and I enjoyed that a lot, just getting out. But yeah, since the pandemic, I don't really miss it, and yeah, I don't really have much of a social life, but we do have a small group of friends that, you know, we may get together with, and I just started playing golf a couple of years ago, so you know, we have a small group that we play golf with, so it's not as prominent as it used to be. I don't know if that's the right word. Uh, it's you know, definitely a lot less, you know, after the MS than before the MS. Yeah.
Like we talked about before, there is no cure for MS. It is a permanent disease that people will carry with them for the rest of their lives. However, there are ways to slow the progression, such as treatment, diet changes, and exercise.
What types of treatments and or lifestyle improvements have you done to slow down the progression?
So I think I've been on like 5 different types of medications. Some of them I had horrible side effects. I was on Tysabri, which is like an infusion, and I ended up getting that JC virus that became positive while I was taking that, and you can't take that if you have that. So I had to come off that. I was on like 4 other medications throughout my 4 years, and you know, I had a lot of different side effects, so I had to come off pretty much all of them. I'm actually in between medicines right now. I haven't been on anything for a little bit. They were giving me like the steroids, where that was just a mess. I mean, you know, I have anxiety anyway because of assuming because of MS. I don't want to blame everything on MS. But that like really heightened it. I gained a lot of weight when I was on it too. So working out was always something that I did prior, and it was part of my life. So I did stay with that path. but I definitely made sure that I don't miss the gym at all. You know, I try to get any cardio I can get in. I mean, I used to eat like crap. I would eat like Oreos and hot dog. I would eat anything that you would put in front of me. And I've definitely taken, you know, I definitely changed my whole dietary lifestyle because of MS. I made sure that I'm eating a lot better. You know, I'm sure at 36 years old, I shouldn't be eating that, you know, garbage anyway, but it definitely gave me an extra reason to make sure that I was eating better. Um, so that would be the big changes that it made for me.
I'm on a rituximab infusion. I go twice a year. I go to physical therapy about once, twice a month.
I'm currently taking Tysabri, which is a every 28-day infusion. I've changed my diet. Well, I'm changing my diet. I'm currently working on it because I can't. It's so hard for me to quit like pork and steak and potatoes and cheese all at once. So it's like a slow progression of changing my diet. Um, I started doing more flexible exercises, not like strength training or whatnot, just more like yoga, stretching, and stuff like that.
Currently, I'm just doing diet. I did all the medications, the most advanced that were available at the time, and they've developed a lot over the last 20 years or so. But I still ended up in a wheelchair, and I started on a strong diet process. There's a diet that was inspired by a doctor that also has MS. She was able to successfully reverse a lot of her symptoms with diet. So I took on a diet that was inspired by that, and I got good progress. When I had an allergic reaction to meds, that kind of pushed the meds off the table for a little while. So at the moment, I'm just doing diet, exercise. Cannabis is also helpful as a therapy and for muscle spasticity and things like that. But I'm not doing the mainstream medications.
For treatments, I have been on DMTs, disease modifying therapies. I've been on Rebif. Rebif is a shot, you know, a self-administered shot given yourself every other day. And I did that for a couple of years. I was unmedicated for about 4 or 5 years. I had a relapse in 2017. I went on to a medication called Tecfidera, a pill you take twice per day, once in the morning, once in the evening. I thought I had reasonably good success on that. I had a nice 2-year run. However, I had a relapse while on that medication. So now I'm on a drug called Ocrevus. Ocrevus is an infusion that I get every 6 months, and I've been on that for just over 2 years. So far, so good. My MRIs have not changed in those 2 years. As I said, I also take an antidepressant to help slow me down. But I did go on a health kick after about a year and a half after diagnosis. The first year after diagnosis, I just went down that dark place we already talked about, and woe is me. I ate anything and everything that I possibly could, and then I went on a health kick. I don't want to say it was a vegan diet. I want to say it was, you know, anything. It was a high protein, balanced carb, balanced fat diet. I lost a bunch of weight. I felt really good about myself. That's when I stopped the Rebif medication, and I had a pretty good run for a while. I've since put the weight back on. I need to improve my diet, and I know that I felt good when I had this weight off, and I know I felt good on that higher protein, lower fat, lower carbohydrate diet. So I need to embrace that and get back to that lifestyle.
Well, I do the medication. That's probably the biggest thing I do. Dieting, I try to do, but you know, it's always hard for anyone to stay on a diet. But and then resting is another big thing that, as much as it can seem unproductive, especially with cognitional issues, that helps quite a lot. That once you start to get the fatigue to lay down and even take a nap, regardless if you feel like you need to do something, like resting is the biggest thing. My mom sleeps all the time after work.
I am currently on my third, as they call it, DMD, disease modifying medicine. I started off when I was newly diagnosed for the first, I guess, 8 years. I was on Avenox, which is an interferon, and I gave myself a shot once a week. I usually did it on Friday because I worked at a hospital, and I do it at work and then drive 45 minutes home. By the time I got home, I had 103 fever. Did that for 8 years. But I was such a wimp, and I work at a hospital. After the first couple of months, I said, I'm not going to give myself that shot anymore. I work with nurses, so I just had them give it to me. That was a miserable medication, but it did slow the progression. Then I guess about 10 years after I was on it, I changed to Tysabri. It was the newest and latest and greatest medicine at the time. And I was on Tysabri for about 10 years, which did a really good job at delaying progression. But then I tested positive for the JC virus, which is very detrimental, or could be very detrimental. So that being said, I then transferred over to Ocrevus to avoid the JC virus. And I've been on Ocrevus for the last 3 years, I guess, 3 years. And that's what I'm doing to halt the progression.
Yeah, I became vegetarian, pescatarian actually. So I eat fish. I'm not going to be vegan. There's no way I can give up some things. I think that stopping the protein has helped me a lot. And I've stopped all of the infusion medications, what they call the DMTs. I did that about 2 years ago and am now on oral medications like, well, I take pills like Amperin, which is it's a pigeon poison that they use to poison pigeons in London. And I take that twice a day to help my balance. And but other than that, I'm not on any other I take bunch of other kinds of medications to control my peeing and other things like that are MS oriented. But I'm not on any infusions anymore.
I was originally on Tecfidera, and then the insurance and pharmaceutical companies got involved, and they wanted me to go on generic. And I have no problem with generics, but I was having adverse reactions to the generics. So for 5 months, and I was reporting this to my neurologist, they sent me different samples from different manufacturers, and I was having those. So I said, it's like, do you like soda? Well, how can I tell you I like soda if you don't give me the same brand all the time? So we couldn't figure out what the adverse reactions were coming from. So then I changed, and now I'm taking Ocrevus infusions on regular. So every 6 months I have that now.
I've done Copaxone. I've done Tecfidera. I've done Tysabri. I've done Avonex. Copaxone, I had an allergic reaction to. Tecfidera, I had an allergic reaction to. I am also HIV positive. So there are very limited numbers of treatments that I can do. Tecfidera is one of the ones that Tecfidera and Copaxone are two of the treatments that I can do. Having had allergic reactions to both of them really, really cuts down what my doctor can put me on. Both of them are said to be very safe treatments. And they're both once a day. Tecfidera is a pill, Copaxone is an injection. So they're both once a day. So they're both very the amount of medicine that's in them is very small. So that's why they're said to be very safe. So me having allergic reactions to those, my doctor is very, very concerned about what he puts me on. Some of the medications I've been on have taken my white blood cell count to a dangerously low level, to the point that I was hospitalized. The Tysabri, I have the JVC virus. So I was taken off of that. I was on that for 5 years. That was very successful for me. But I had the JVC virus, which in layman's terms, you can build up, it can cause brain cancer. So my doctor took me off of that because I built up an immunity to that. So yes, I've been on a number of treatments. Right now, I am taking nothing.
If somebody told me back in 2008 that a great anti-inflammatory diet and drinking plenty of water was going to have a great impact on my quality of life with MS, then I probably would be feeling like this like sooner. In 2013, we started an anti-inflammatory diet, and the book was called The Plan by Lynn Janae, and she talked about eating the right foods, but some healthy foods might not be right for you. So it's more of like an elimination diet. You just find out which foods cause inflammation in your body, and then so over a period of 3 years, I found from 2013 to 2016, my energy levels were a lot more. My fatigue was a lot less. I learned how to, keep water, hydrated. And and then 2016, I was able to replace all my meds with just food. And so 2016 was the last time I took any medications. I haven't even taken an aspirin since 2016. And I just treat myself with water and diet. And so if that could help anybody, living with MS, then that would be the advice I would give them. Look for a great anti-inflammatory diet and drink plenty of water.
Fortunately, my progression was halted. I did what's called stem cell transplant, and it's called hematopoietic stem cell transplant back in 2016. I did, to answer your question, I did do Copaxone for a year, which actually landed me in the hospital with anaphylactic shock, literally a year to the day. And I was on Rebif for a short period of time, and then Avonex, for a little over a year. And then it just got to the point, I'm not going to continue doing these and taking these meds. There was not a good med out there, and that could really make a difference. So I started exploring and researching and just spending a lot of time subscribing to different medical journals and periodicals and really scouring the internet. And that's where I came across stem cell transplant. And so I actually went out of the country, started actually with going up to Dr. Burt's clinical trial up in Chicago, Northwestern. And that was back in 2015. I wasn't accepted in that particular trial because he was looking for a certain criteria of individuals. I was looking more in a younger age group at that time, more females, and specifically relapsing and remitting. And at that time, I was transitioning into what's called secondary progressive, and didn't know that at that time, but that's what I found out. So I'm not on any current treatments, haven't been on any treatments in some time.
When I first was diagnosed, I changed to a diet called AIP, autoimmune protocol. And what it does is it cuts out all food all the common food sensitivities. And so I did that, and then I started seeing a functional doctor to see what I could do with functional health. I still see my neurologist. I do take a DMD. I didn't take it for a little while, but to help cool down my diagnosis, I've started taking a DMD or DMT. And at first I was on Tecfidera, and then because of insurance that it was switched to the generic dimethyl fumarate. So I still focus on my diet. I do cold therapy. So every single morning when I get up, I take a cold shower, and then I'll do some things like red light and take vitamin C, vitamin D in the morning. And and I experiment with a bunch of different stuff. Like I've done the working on my vagal nerve and parasympathetic. I've done exercises for that. And right now I'm focusing on my environment, and I'm going along that route and open up my body and working on the environment. And there's a bunch of guys in the functional world who they've talked about having some success doing that. So that's the route that I'm going.
Yeah, I should be very embarrassed answering this question. I haven't done anything. There's nothing different in my daily life in terms of diet, in terms of exercise. I haven't done. Yeah, I join once a week. I try to join once a week a group that your father belongs to. It's a group of men that get together and talk about it, having MS, and a lot of them talk about drinking a lot of water, eating differently, and I haven't done any of that. The only treatment that my neurologist has put me on is what they call the DMT, the disease modifying therapy. I started taking that in February, and I'll know if it works with my next CAT scans, which is scheduled for May. No, I won't know if it works, but the DMT, all it does is apparently the therapy just slows down the progress. So I'm taking that one medication, one pill every day. And I just started today, actually, a medication that's supposed to help with pain, and another medication, again, just today, that's supposed to help with my gait. But I haven't done any real nutrition changes, or what I take a daily vitamin D, multivitamin, that's it, but diet, no.
How has the global pandemic that is COVID-19 affected your life with a disease such as this?
You want to talk about high risk? That's me. Very immune suppressed, I should say. I was very big in that. I mean, when COVID first broke out, I was panic stricken. Because I was right there at the top of the list. I was in Home Depot just like covered up like a surgeon. But I was there. I had my goggles over my glasses. I had my mask on. I had my gloves on, and I was washing my hands every hour. It's been it really affected me. I mean, I didn't go anywhere but working home.
It actually almost really has. I think the only thing that happened is when I did take the shot, right? Because you had to do the vaccine, then I'm always bound to do them. But I do think that because I got the fever, right? The second shot I ended up getting the fever and all this stuff, and that kind of aggravated my MS symptoms. But other than that, it really hasn't. I mean, I'm always a homebody anyway, so when they put the restrictions down, it didn't really change most of my life.
I've always been careful about like not trying to catch anything, but since then I've been very vigilant about making sure that I wear a mask outside. Maybe not so much now, but back in like the summer of 2019 and 2020, 21, I was always wearing a mask to everything I went to, like the store, the um the hospital, just anything. Now I'm a little bit more relaxed, but I still carry around my little bottle of hand sanitizer. I still wash my hands every 20 seconds, like say. I mean, if it's a really crowded place, like when there was a storm here a couple weeks ago, I and the and Kroger's or whatever was packed with a lot of people, I would wear my mask. But besides that, I would say I'm pretty much just going with the flow of things now.
I don't want to be around people who aren't vaccinated, and I want to still be safe, because I really feel like that if I have get COVID, I will die. I've really scared myself into thinking that.
So it can have a wide impact on people with MS. I was not taking the medications that take your immune system down a peg. So that was an advantage in this case, because I think with a lot of the MS medications, you did have to be concerned because the defenses, because of the medications that are used for MS, it's an autoimmune disease. So treating it often is dialing down the immune response. That can have an effect on whether you were vulnerable to COVID and things like that. I wasn't taking those medications, so that was not an immediate concern. At the same time, I didn't want to get infected. If I get a fever, suddenly, like any other body heat issue, suddenly I don't walk so well, so I can't use my arms that great. So the idea of having a fever for a few weeks or whatever that might have come with it was not good. So we isolated, masked up. I did do the vaccines. A lot of people, they had questions whether that was a good thing or not. I did, and I had no second thoughts about after that. Yeah. So in many ways, I probably had the same effect that everybody else had. But yeah, you do think about there's just a little bit more moving parts with MS.
It didn't really impact it at all. The only time it ever impacted, I did get COVID. My wife and I both did last October, early November, and how it impacted me, I woke up one morning, and it's like early in the morning, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I had a little bit of a fever. It doesn't take much for fever to impact someone with MS because your symptoms really spike. And I couldn't move my legs at all. Could not move my legs, and because I had fever. But fortunately, I had some oral steroids in the house, and did take some ibuprofen so I could at least function. I did do the whole COVID protocol. If you get it, you're kind of quarantined, and we were quarantined in the house. But other than that, really didn't make much of an impact on me with the MS. Other than it did bring out the symptoms a little bit more.
I live in South America, and we were awful in 2021. 2020 was not, I wasn't here where I live in 2020. I was actually back where I'm from with mom and dad because the borders of the country I live in were closed, so I couldn't get back in. So I was with mom and dad all of 2020, and there was nothing going on. My country is so small. There was very few cases. 2021 here was awful. We were one of the worst countries in the world. But just today's newspaper just announced that we no longer need to wear masks as of Sunday. The numbers are really, really low. We have a very high vaccination rate. Vaccination was very popular here, and we're doing fine. The economy's bounced back. I would almost say that things here are as normal as it was in 2019.
Well, to tell you the truth, it really did not have much of an impact on our lifestyle. Because by that time, we'd already been, all our food, was local, so we never experienced a shortage of any food that we ate. We were already, kind of like in our own bubble, by that time. And we had gone on a few trips, so we already knew that we could spend every day together for any given period of time, and still do well and not have much issues. But I think just the I know I guess a little bit of stress and anxiety about going out in public and knowing that COVID was out there.
It hasn't changed it at all. I still live my life. I go out with friends early on until I had an idea of what really was going on, that I was a little paranoid then, probably. Yeah, I was. But then as time went on and learned more about it, that I'm pretty open with everything, and I'll go out with friends, and there's a chance that I've caught it twice already. So I ended up getting sick, got hit with something really, really bad. I don't get sick very much, but I ended up getting hit with something. Then I know the treatment is stuff to take, so I just go out with friends and live my best life.
COVID had an interesting impact on my family, whereas I've tried to slow down. One thing that I've always done is I've done the grocery shopping in my family. My wife does not like to grocery shop. And during the pandemic, we did not want to chance it. With me being on Ocrevus, a immunosuppressant therapy, my wife actually did all the grocery shopping, and I would sit in the car. She would go in all masked up, and and then she'd come out and I'd be masked up, and we put all the groceries in the car, come home, do some cleaning of stuff. Then we also we probably did not start going out as quickly as our friends, and I know that I wore my mask a lot longer than other people, even though I got the vaccination as soon as I possibly could. That was actually a benefit to having MS. I was one of the first people that could get the vaccination, and I did as soon as I could. I got the vaccination. I got the second dose. I've been boosted. I'm currently on a waiting list for Evushell, and I'll be getting my fourth booster probably in July. And I think that I believe that the vaccination has been good for me. It's allowing me to attempt to return to a normal lifestyle, but COVID really slowed me down. Um, it also saved us a lot of money. We didn't go anywhere. We all sat in the house, and we had to like each other. So in that sense, it was actually pretty good for us. But like I said, my wife, it actually had a bigger impact on my wife than it did on me. I just did less.
So because I had MS, at the place I was working when COVID kind of like broke out, I was like one of the first people that they had working from home. And I remember being very nervous when COVID came about, because I know that I'm autoimmune compromised. I wasn't sure exactly, if I went outside, am I going to get COVID and die? Like, there was no information in the beginning really for people with MS. And, I basically became like a hermit there for a while. I didn't really leave the house. But after talking to my doctors and things like that, I mean, I was the first one to get the vaccine. I wasn't sure what, side of the fence I was on that, but, I wanted to make sure that I got that because, who knew what was going to happen. So that definitely changed. I mean, I never worked from home before. But, now 2 years later, I'm in a whole different job, a whole different company. And I'm really not nervous with COVID. I mean, I know people that have MS that got it, and it didn't seem to affect them any more than, maybe people that didn't have it at this point. I don't know with the different variants. It doesn't seem like it's as bad as it was in the beginning, at least. But I was definitely nervous when I first started about this COVID stuff.
You know, the excuse me, the disease kind of keeps me a homebody, as it were, already. But the whole COVID thing, you got to be extra careful because the Ocrevus, the DMD that I'm on right now, just destroys my immune system. So it makes me more vulnerable to COVID, which I contracted pretty bad, my wife and I. And I was feverish for 2 weeks straight. And heat for MS patients is the worst thing that they can contract because it just destroys you. So it was a rough couple of 3 weeks a month when I got COVID. Since then, I'm just trying to stay away from big gatherings and doing a fair to good job at that. So
COVID affecting it, definitely. I think we became more isolated as a society because of the pandemic, but being compromised with the immune system, I had to be much more cautious. So I was more isolated than typical. And that's troubling in so many ways. But as my doctor told me, and I really agree with her and support her, she says, the less times you roll the dice, the less your chances of crapping out are. So I avoided crowded environments. I always wore a mask if I was indoors around people, those types of things. But the opportunities to get out and see people was a lot more limited as well.
Now, because people with MS are considered high risk, how has COVID-19 affected your life?
Because before there was a vaccine and because he is high risk, I did for a year and a half, I did all the grocery shopping and all the shopping that needed to be done. He would drop me off and pick me up later. Also, we were some of the first people to get the vaccine, and continue to get our vaccines. Also, we've worn masks longer than some other people do.
It's affected it a lot. Like he said, we both had it in January of 21, so it was the worst strain so far. Me suffering long-term symptoms that I still have, just for both of us, being very careful when we go outside. And when it first came up, the virus, I would be the one to go out because we were really frightened and we didn't want him to be exposed, even though through me it'd be secondary exposure by me going out. So we had to learn how to do online shopping. We still are careful, still cautious, try not to let fear rule us, and we try to be balanced, but it's definitely more scary with Eric because I don't want him to contract it again with his MS in the background.
Well, I had a infectious disease when I was 8 years old, so I kind of am a little bit germ phobic because of the dynamic of this infectious hepatitis I had. And the dynamic of being sick for 3 months at age 8, they taught me so many things about hygiene and how to, do your business in the bathroom to stay clean, and how germs were passed, and they were taking blood from me every week. And it was just a real childhood traumatic experience that when the pandemic came, I was like, I know how to stay away from germs. And especially the first 4 months, I think I'm probably the hypochondriac in between us. Definitely worried about him, definitely had conversations about who he was going out with. Like, he really stepped up and personally helped the community. I I made phone calls to the elderly in our community to see if they were okay and they needed anything, but he actually delivered things, like groceries and pharmaceuticals and stuff when people needed it. So during that first 4 months of the pandemic, I think I was really hyper active on just making sure we were safe. And we did a good job. We're fortunate because we live in a very rural area. So, you know, I can't even see my neighbors. I don't feel confined. Even at my grocery store, it's very simple to stay 6 feet away from people.
You know, for the first year and a half, it was terrible. Like, Kent put the fear of God in us. None of us went out. We were all just sequestered. And yeah, he's considered high risk, but really not so much because he's not taking an immunosuppressant drug right now. But if he gets even if he gets a cold, it flares up his MS. So we're pretty diligent and careful. Where a lot of people aren't masking, we still mask. We're obviously all of us are triple vaccinated, and you know, COVID was pretty scary for us at first. We actually had a neighbor when it was early 2020, approached Kent very closely, and she had been out. She's not someone who would wear a mask, and both of us kind of freaked. So we were pretty hypersensitive to it. Now, I mean, we will go out in public and things like that, but we're still pretty careful.
After viewing everyone, I gave them 1 to 2 minutes to provide any final messages that they want to get out there. Now, this is the final segment of this video. Thank you for watching, and here are those messages.
You know, men especially, who are diagnosed with MS, it's not a death sentence. If anything, it should be treated as a life sentence. And how you choose to live your life with MS is going to determine and predestine as far as where you're possibly, if you're going to wallow in it and say the woe is me for years and years and years. If I was wallowing in my MS for 17 years, you and I wouldn't be talking on the phone or on the Zoom. And so I'm a big believer in positivity. I'm a man of faith, so I think that's very important as well. And you know, so that would be my last statement, is that, you know, men with MS, we are not broken, we're not defeated, we're just modified. That's it.
I think for anybody who encounters somebody with MS, be considerate. For anybody who, you never know what's going on with somebody, so you should be considerate with anybody anyway. But if you are a spouse of somebody with MS or a family member of somebody with MS, be patient and understanding. It's been easy for us because of Kent's attitude. You know, a lot of people get bitter and angry, and they're really hard to support. So I don't know what to tell family members for that. You just watch out for caregiver burnout. And the other thing is, you know, I don't look at myself as a caregiver for Kent. If you are in a relationship with someone with MS, it can turn into that dynamic, which would impact your marriage. For us, fortunately, that has not happened. So trying to keep your husband-wife relationship intact is really, really important.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I'm beginning to realize is I think that we need to be more aware of our bodies. You, your father, everybody that you know. we need to be more aware and listen to our bodies, because I think there's not a tendency, but there's a risk of ignoring the signs that your body gives you, and then it's not that it's a matter of being too late, but you maybe have missed years, in my case, of potential treatment. So I think my only message would be to everybody in general, that listen to your body. You know, if you see a lump somewhere, you know, don't say, oh, it's just a pimple, you know, go get it checked out. If you're walking funny, go get it checked out.
Yeah, what I think is important with MS is to find a group or peers that help you. I found a group online where I met your dad, and I was it really means a lot to me, and still does, where I've met and become friends with people who are from different parts of the world and different parts of the country, with different ideas, people who I never would have met. And the only thing we have in common is that we're guys and we have MS, and we talk about all kinds of things. And to have that support system is really important. And I really feel like I've made friends there who I've never actually met personally in person, but will do a lot of things for me and have been inspirations for me. So I think that's important.
There's a learning curve, definitely, living with somebody with MS. You don't know what to expect, and you can hear stories of other people's experience, but until you're really, Caleb's experience is his unique to him. I learn a lot from him because he doesn't just sit and deal with it in his head and kind of expect everybody to tell him what to do. He's actually been his own advocate and learned what works for him, and that's led him on a path that I think is given him the best quality of life. So we're going with it day by day. I don't have any expectations of the future, but I'm not afraid of it by any means. We're taking it on. And the fact that he just is proactive in taking care of himself is just a great example.
MS doesn't control you; you control your MS. So there's that. But MS is a MS is a silent disease that you won't know. So always be careful to people that walking by you. You never know what they might be dealing with on a daily basis. So don't be assuming that someone looks healthy that they are always going to be able to do whatever you want. You got to adapt to what someone needs rather than you force what you want on someone.
Living with the MS, there's always the question, is this flare up the one that he's not going to recover from? Because right now he has the kind of MS that you have a flare up like in his eyes, or he's had Bell's palsy. And with medication, it doesn't go away 100%, but it goes away 80 to 90%. At some point, we're not going to be that lucky anymore. So every time he feels dizzy or he's not feeling well or has a bad day, there's the thought in the back of my mind, is this it?
Anybody with MS, just stay positive stay as positive as you can. And anyone who says this disease is life-changing, like, yeah, it's life-changing for the worse. This disease sucks, and anyone who says it doesn't, they lie. I just I just want everyone to be happy with as happy as can be with the situation they have and the circumstance they have. Take the small things for granted. I think everyone's guilty of that, like taking small stuff that we used to do, like, yeah, I can walk, I can drive a car, no problem. And then when you come face with, you have a hard time walking, or you can't walk, or you can't drive a car, reality sinks in. You're like, this sucks.
I tell people all the time, I'm a pro grappler. MS is that thing that, I've been fighting, preparing for my whole life. But it's definitely a fight I didn't sign up for. The harder that you prepare yourself, for a fight, right? You get your training in, you work out, diet, get your support system, like your training, your training partners, your cornermen, things like that. It's the same thing with MS, right? Support system's huge. My family always has my back, my friends, same thing. Prepare, just like we said, make sure that you're eating right, working out, keeping your body in top-notch shape so that when that episode comes about or the relapse, you're ready for it and you're better prepared for it. That's my mindset, and you just got to be ready for anything because you never know when it's going to happen with that mess.
First of all, living with MS and being a wife of somebody who has MS, I know it differs from person to person because MS is different for everyone. I've not seen two people with the same whole life or symptoms. For us, we take it day by day, and as I said at the beginning, I think the biggest takeaway for me to impart is we don't let it affect our life. It's definitely a conversation and we're aware of it every single day. But in as much as possible that has to do with us, we are not going to let it take from us. We are going to live our lives, and it's something Eric has and we deal with it, but it's not the focal point of our relationship or our life. And we're going to keep improving to get better if possible, or to at least prolong aging in general. But we have goals to eat better, to exercise more, and things like that that are within our power to help if possible.
Well, really, I just wanted to say that, for most people with MS, as I said before in this thing, that one of the hardest issues we have is people actually believing or seeing that we are sick, right? Especially when you're in the very early stages with like RRMS. Our things will come and go, and we have to very much so, as everyone else thinks we're crazy or that we're hypochondriac, we have to really battle with that, because it could literally sit within our brains like, are we really overthinking this? And then you get really frustrated. And if to anyone with MS, try not to worry about all that. Like, just know that you yourself are not some hypochondriac trying to get sympathy, because we all know it's most likely not going to happen. Most people are still going to question whether or not you're sick. And so my biggest point is to just don't allow yourself to feel like your symptoms don't matter, or that you have to question whether or not you're really having something going on.
When I was first diagnosed, and there were a couple doctors that were really supportive, and one was a friend and a doctor. And at first I was really afraid because I had lost a colleague's son had got ELS, and I was just keeping my fingers crossed that wasn't the case. But he assured me that, you can live with MS, make the best of it. It's going to change you, but it's not going to consume you to the point where you are non-existent. And he says, what I will tell you is MS is not going to kill you, but you are going to die with it. So I thought that was kind of a comforting reassurance that make the best of it and keep moving forward. And then as I move forward, what I look at is you can't change the past. You can't look forward and try to embrace the future. You have to live in the present. And if we break down present, Christmas present, it's a gift. So as we're in the present, realize the present is a gift and cherish it and make the best of it. And that's kind of how I approach my life now. and I do look back, and I mean, I don't like being sick with it, but I'll tell you, in some ways it was a blessing because it woke me up and changed my perspective on living.
18 years into MS, I think some of the things that have really helped me the most, diet and exercise, and at a very basic level, I think that's been a good thing. If I had continued to eat the same diet that I had prior to diagnosis, which is just pretty much an ordinary diet, or if I had given up on exercise and things like that, I think that would have had some significant impact on how fast my disease progressed and how I did. I think beyond that, but so those are just some physical things. But I think in terms of dealing with it, being willing to adapt to stuff is important. I think as MS takes away the ability to do certain things, you can easily say, oh, well, I guess I'm never going to do that again. And you can find yourself really boxed in. All of a sudden, there's a long list of things you can't do. But I think for me, being willing to adapt and try something different, it surprised me that there's still a really good life to be had with MS. It's, this is not the worst thing that's ever going to happen to me. Being in a wheelchair wasn't the worst thing that ever happened to me. I mean, yeah, I'm glad that I'm not using it currently. The diet, since I've done that, I've been able to get out of the wheelchair. But still don't walk great, but at least I'm a little better in that regard. But I think that willingness to just adapt, to try some different things, not put limits on myself. I think that's another one. Is the biggest disabilities that I've run into sometimes are the ones that we put on ourselves, and assuming that we can't do something, or that something won't be possible.
MS, to me, is an invisible disease, but not to everyone. It is a part of my life. I am not going to let MS define who I am as a father, as a husband, as an employee, as a professional. But MS is a part of who I am. It's not my definition.
I wish I could go back to the way I was. Now so weak, back before the EMTs. Walk slightly assisted, even none at all. Run, walk, stroll, stand tall. Soccer, baseball, hands partially numb. I'm slightly dumb. MS can kiss my ass. I cry or weep, I can't sleep. Legs so weak, issues when I speak. See straight, nope. Bladder leak, bowel issues. Shower stench, runny nose tissues. Sweaty drench, running down a drain. I miss, I wish, for an easy time. MS issues, no reason, no rhyme. Why me? I just like the way